Mr. Luo struggled to speak for a long time. Su Chi, however, didn't pay attention to Mr. Luo's frozen soul. He was taking in his surroundings. Now that he had entered a range he had never been in before, things were bound to be different. Moreover, Su Chi could feel the world tree withered leaf stuck to his body getting quite hot. This indicated that he was getting closer to the place it was leading him to. It's just that this world, Su Chi paused, is a bit strange. In the sky dome, one can see a multitude of chains like starlight coming from all directions, as if they are shackling this world with iron chains. And this place. Su Chi slowly stretched out his hand and scooped up a handful of earth. It's even more dead and stagnant. And from the beginning, I've noticed there's no wind, no movement of air, no sound of streams, as if time has stood still. What do you think, Brother Luo? Mr. Luo fumbled with being called Brother Luo. He was currently in a very complicated mood. His thoughts had only just begun to recover from the crash, but they were still on the verge of breaking down. The abyss power that he had guarded against so vigilantly, and the immortal path that he had protected meticulously over numerous years, the chosen Daozi, turned out to be the leader of these abyss believers. But Mr. Luo quickly regained his composure because he realized no matter what, even if he could be mistaken, the immortal path still wouldn't be. The immortal path would never choose someone whose cultivation heart leans toward the abyss. After all, the destruction of the entire immortal path dimension came from the abyss. They even represented the order that saves all lives. However, he was now certain. Everything he had just witnessed was not false. Whether it was the abyss believers at this moment or the totem on Su Chi's arm. Each one of them was elite among the elite, not something ordinary believers could compare to. And that totem, in particular, was emitting an even more evil aura than the other gathered believers. So, Mr. Luo very much needed an explanation. If even the immortal path steel was wrong, then he would have blown up with abyss power. No, blown up with what? He had sworn an oath to the immortal path, vowing to protect the Daozi to the death. Even if he had been deceived, he still had no way out. Mr. Luo's heart trembled, his expression serious. He took a deep breath and said with an extremely solemn tone, "What on earth is going on, Daozi? Why have you become a member of the Abyss Church?" Listening to Mr. Luo's tone, Su Chi replied with a faint smile, "Brother Luo, don't take such a stern tone, as if you're about to explode at me. Don't worry about it. Although, as you've seen, I am now a venerable of the Abyss believers, possessing an Abyss totem, with a bunch of Abyss believers as my underlings, you have to believe that I am a good person." Not a bit believable. Mr. Luo's eyes widened. These points were already his taboo, and while he didn't know what exactly the title Venerable entailed, it was clearly a high-ranking title within the Abyss. How could he possibly be at ease? All right, Su Chi said, sensing Mr. Luo's fluctuating emotions. "I'll stop teasing you. In fact, I'm on an undercover mission. During the time you were asleep, I successfully infiltrated their ranks and became the captain of an Abyss team." Mr. Luo was somewhat bewildered. "But, the totem on your body, this is the power of the immortal path," Su Chi said, blatantly lying. "Its mysteries are endless, hiding me within them. This totem, though carved on my arm, is actually isolated from me." The earlier statement was nonsense, since the right to interpret the power of the immortal path currently lay with him. Even the once demigod Mr. Luo had not fathomed it. The latter statement was true. Initially, the totem was merely a tattoo formed by the spiritual eyes, but as time went on, it became increasingly solid and continued to grow stronger, although Su Chi, of course, remained unaffected by it. "Is that so?" Mr. Luo was taken aback. With Su Chi's deliberate display, he also saw, indeed, the Abyss totem was not like the others, rooted into the body, infiltrating the soul. "So, it's the power of the immortal path," he murmured. "If that's the case, then it makes sense. The secrets of the immortal path are only comprehended by saints." Brother Luo, true to character, he had already accepted it. If it were old Huang, not only would he not believe it, but he'd also be looking for a chance to run away at any moment. After all these years, Mr. Luo is still a big, honest man. But that's good. The Hustlers sect needs someone cunning and sinister. Old Huang is sufficient for the job. It also needs someone with a strong sense of principle, so the moral baseline of members of the Hustlers doesn't sink too low. However, Mr. Luo still frowned. Although you, Daozi, can now wield the power of the immortal path, choosing to infiltrate the Abyss Church is too dangerous. Su Qi spread his hands. You have to seek fortune amidst danger. Moreover, the immortal path and the present world are inherently on the same side, with all life caught in this maelstrom. Everything that happens here will determine the future direction of the present world and the Abyss. As a Daozi, I naturally have to step forward. After all, I have my heart set on the common people. Mr. Luo was somewhat moved. Daozi, your righteousness. Su Qi modestly said, righteousness? That's saying too much, just a bit of justice. In front of Mr. Luo, Su Qi decided to maintain his image, fearing that Mr. Luo wouldn't accept what he had to do. After all, there were still significant tasks, such as confronting the evil god, that would require Mr. Luo's involvement. He also wondered if Old Huang had also come to join them. If he had, those fighting against the evil god would have one more ally. Far away, Old Huang couldn't help shivering and felt some unease in his heart. Priest, it's nothing. Old Huang returned from his distraction, rubbed his forehead with some anxiety, and did not reveal his discomfort to the members but muttered to himself in his heart. Strange, ever since we entered this dark zone, I've been feeling uneasy, as if big trouble is coming. It shouldn't be, I've been very low-key. He decided to lead everyone to the core area just once, get the chance of demigod level, then retreat immediately. After all, it was a guerrilla war, plus now that he had recovered some strength, he had plenty of life-saving measures. On top of that, he had quietly retrieved several hidden divine artifacts. At this moment, Old Huang suppressed the feeling of unease, and a calmness surged in his heart. No problem. He was very stable now. Su Qi led the Abyss believers forward. This world was very strange. Time seemed to stand still, yet it also preserved ancient relics of the past, with distinct ancient battlefield grounds visible. Su Qi's eyes gathered information and also leveraged the power of the Abyss followers. Venerable, we have just summoned the Dark Scripture, guiding us towards this direction. Su Qi nodded. I know, stand down. Yes. Luo Xinfu watched this scene, his eyebrows involuntarily twitching. No matter how many times he saw it, he found it somewhat outrageous. His own Daozi becoming an undercover captain. However, Luo Xinfu still didn't know what venerable meant. He simply thought of it as the leader of a small squad. If the status could be maintained without being exposed, without any flaws showing. Luo Xinfu thought it indeed was a good strategy, having the forces of the Abyss create opportunities for him, and indeed, these evil believers could be used without any burden. In this way, perhaps he could come into contact with even more central but dangerous powers, to see if he could obtain extraordinary opportunities, and he would be able to lend a hand then. Of course, what Luo Xinfu didn't know was what they would be facing next. Mr. Luo, what do you think? Luo Xinfu came back to his senses slightly. He was probing with his spiritual energy. Since this is the heart of the Dark Zone, it means that you have entered the forbidden ancient battlefield. How so? Su Qi's eyes moved slightly. When the Dark Zone appeared, I already understood that it was the so-called World Tree Ship, the ship of hope once made, gathering numerous powerful worlds, serving as the last bastion of the present world. Luo Xinfu was explaining to Su Qi, and at the last moment, it naturally became the fiercest battlefield. Countless worlds shattered, turned into fragments. And this place is the world ship ancient battlefield. Su Qi paused. Is that so? He had his speculations but had never confirmed them. So, this place indeed possesses endless opportunities. A large number of coordinates of gods, dormant powers are all here, Luo Xinfu said softly. But it also contains infinite danger. A slight carelessness leads to a deathly hell. He sighed softly. Actually, according to my initial plan, I wanted you, Daozi, to join the team of Heavenly Destiny people and befriend these Heavenly Destiny people on the way. But, Luo Shinfu said solemnly, I didn't expect you to do the opposite. He knew of the Heavenly Destiny people plan because there had been Heavenly Destiny people who had previously entered the trials a long time ago. This was a plan involving Heavenly Destiny people that had been laid out for countless years and was also the navigator of the fate of the present world. Each one of them was the hope of the present world. No big deal. Su Qi paused. Unite all the forces that can be united. Even abyss power can be borrowed for a while. Anyway, Luo Shinfu said helplessly, everything here is covered by the old days. You've seen those black rains before. They exist here too, and are even more turbulent and terrifying. And this place will naturally be different from other areas. All right, then we'll just have to take one step at a time and see. Su Qi really wanted to complain inwardly. Although Luo Shinfu said a lot, he actually knew most of it already. But that was normal. This place was covered by the old days, and the traces of the past were buried. No one probably knew what would actually happen here. And about half an hour had passed. Everything here still bore the signs of antiquity, endless ruin, and disarray. However, changes had appeared. In the sky dome, large amounts of thick clouds had emerged, terrifying blackness tumbling within them. Venerable, be careful. The followers directly warned. This is the illusory rain of the abyss's fog from the ancient days. A short exposure isn't a big deal as one has spiritual energy for protection, but if one is exposed for a long time and the spiritual energy is exhausted, one will be pulled into the old days. Su Qi replied, Okay, got it. It's not like I'm a newbie. I've seen all this before and I'm quite familiar with it. The Dark Zone had many resurrected artifacts of antiquity, shocking, deterring, and fearing many as disasters. It seemed that he had already experienced all this before. But it's the black rain again. Su Qi stretched out his hand, looking at that swath of dense black clouds, while further ahead, it had already started pouring heavily. Looking even further ahead, there was the endless black and white expanse of the old days. Venerable, look ahead. The hoarse voices of the followers suddenly spoke. At the same time, the dark scriptures floating around were also slowly providing guidance. That is, Luo Shinfu's eyes narrowed sharply. A door. Within the black and white of the old days, there stood a rectangular door, motionless, emitting a strange and slightly colorful fluctuation. Venerable, it seems that is the entrance we were guided to, the followers said softly. Su Qi paused. At the previous Abyss convention, all the decisions regarding the Abyss believers were actually quite simple. That was to unseal the slumbering Abyss power along the way. Another was the ultimate goal of the followers, which was to send all the Venerables to that place. He was sorry to say, although the description of that place at the convention was vague, Su Qi still knew which place it referred to. The world where that small town was situated. And, unfortunately, he had been there too, and he did not know if it was due to the influence of the evil god's projection of strength at that time or other factors, but the familiar faces there might have come back to life, transformed into another terrifying form. Now, it was time for his triumphant return, to see the hometown elders and folks again. Okay, I understand, said Su Qi unequivocally. You can start preparing. Yes, we will now commence the second phase of the Venerable Plan. The followers, in alliance with many Abyss believers, began to set up the ceremony, now about to send the Venerable to the guided coordinates. As for those other than the followers, who did not have the qualifications to enter, they continued to vie for relics and resources within the core area of the world fragments with real-world life forms, while waiting for the Great War and the descent. Luo Shinfu appeared somewhat astonished. What do you mean, you're going in? And what exactly was the Venerable Plan they were talking about? There's no way around it. One cannot catch tiger cubs without entering the tiger's den, Su Qi said calmly, ignoring Luo Shinfu's strenuous objections, as the ceremony lit up behind him, gathering a sanctuary of Abyss power for him. He had opened a passage through which he could safely go past the black rain, traverse the old days, and reach the door marked as the point of guidance. Although Su Chi himself could now directly enter with his spiritual energy, why not have others do the work instead? Besides, there was another point. The world tree withered leaf on Su Chi was also getting hotter, and the coordinates it guided him to were also precisely the door before him that stood amid countless falls of black rain, in the midst of the old days. Have you really decided? Luo Shunfu sighed, realizing he couldn't stop any of Daozi's decisions. He could see that the door harbored a fatal, ominous terror, yet it also contained holy light mingled within. This kind of risk-taking was not the path he wanted Daozi to follow. I have decided. The splendor of the immortal path hopes for Dongshan's revival, said Su Chi with a light laugh. Hiding is not an option. Su Chi stepped through the door, and countless heavenly destiny people also found the door of the old days, guided by the leaves. At this moment, Nancy was leading the everyday commerce to the outskirts of the old days' black rain. They were making decisions as well. Do you want to go in? Simon looked at Nancy, shocked and incredulous. Nancy nodded calmly. Why? Simon didn't understand. Their everyday commerce, being a powerful force backed by the Spirit King, naturally knew what kind of situation the Dark Zone was. Being able to grasp the fleeting gold in this torrent was already enough. They should not involve themselves in the more core areas. Jian Xing leaned against the nearby broken wall, stroking the sword in his hand. Because he is a heavenly destiny person. Simon's eyes widened with surprise. What? Nancy let out a wry smile. I didn't expect to be discovered so early. Heavenly destiny people can sense each other. The young master is also a heavenly destiny person, so I've known for a long time, Jian Xing said softly. Nancy's pupils shrank. Mr. And Xing Ho. The young master Spirit King was also among the heavenly destiny people, despite the fact that with his identity, he could stay far away and not bear this heavy mission. Simon hesitated. But, don't worry, I will accompany him. You lead the pioneering team of the commerce to continue to advance in the core world. Jian Xing patted Simon's shoulder. This place was equally vast, filled with various high-sequence relics and powers, half-gods and divine presence. This was the main area of contention for many sinking forces and adventurers. Nancy nodded slightly and suddenly looked into the distance. Wait, I want to ask some people for their opinion first. They might not be content to stay here and may want to move on to a grander stage. Nancy instantly appeared before Bai Yilin and others. Mr. Nancy. Jiang Ji greeted him warmly. They and their brothers from the Meteor Alliance all received the highest level equipment and resource support from the everyday commerce. Bai Yilin and you also nodded to Nancy. Mr. Nancy. Though they were shocked on the first day, over these days they learned the Hustler sect actually had a deep connection with the everyday commerce. According to Mr. Nancy, he and Su Buxian had a generational friendship, so the Hustler sect could be considered to have the backing of the everyday commerce. Mr. Nancy and Mr. Simon indeed spared no effort in their support for them. Their sincerity was beyond doubt. They also held considerable respect for Nancy and Simon. Ladies and gentlemen, now there is a choice for you. Nancy looked gently towards the distant door. To go to a grander stage or to stay here. He wasn't sure what was behind the door, but since everyone present was either from the Hustlers sect or about to become its member, each possessing potential beyond ordinary people, Nancy thought it'd be a pity to miss this opportunity, and he soon received a response. Not a single person refused. Everyone wanted to head to the Gate World. Shandian lay on Long Sun's shoulder, saying, I can understand why they all want to go, but why are you so eager too? Jiang Ji and Bai Yilin also looked at Long Sun. Brother Long, if you don't want to go, there's no need to force yourself. They had all known each other for so long. They actually all knew now that Long Sun was different from everyone else. He seemed to be searching for something, which was Long Sun's true purpose. Long Sun looked at everyone, hesitated for a few seconds, then said, Actually, I need to go there too. The dragon scale on him was heating up at this moment, also pointing towards that door. Although I've concealed a lot, please trust me, I just didn't want to bring any trouble to you all. Nancy looked towards Long Soon, sensing a trace of divinity from his body. One can only say, that guy Su Buxian remains the same as before, always gathering people, each with their own talents, around him. Mr. Nancy, regardless, we will always keep in mind your help and guidance this time, Bai Yilin said gently. On behalf of the Hustlers sect and the sect hierarch, we want to thank you. Nancy looked at Bai Yilin's heartfelt thanks and coughed lightly. What's there to be thankful for? They were all colleagues in the same pit. But since Su Buxian wasn't around, he could just make something up, which wasn't a big deal. Prepare to set off. Nancy also gently placed the world tree withered leaf in the palm of his hand. The power within was enough to create a safe passageway. What exactly lay in the place to which that door led? One could only find out by going through. Su Qi was not alone in stepping through the door. In addition to the 5 followers, there were many ancient beings of the present world in the Holy Light Corridor, as well as a few heavenly destiny people they had rescued earlier. They themselves needed time to recover, to awaken their former strengths. There was no need for it now. However, those heavenly destiny people and followers Su Qi also placed in the corridor, letting them heal themselves. These heavenly destiny people also had a great use. Each of them was a choice of the Eye of Destiny, which was not as simple as a piece of the world tree withered leaf. Eventually, they were to bear the sanctuary of the present world, becoming the main fighting force against the Venerable. Wouldn't that mean I have to bear 2 powers then? Su Qi suddenly muttered to himself. I hope this won't cause a bug. No matter what would happen later, he hoped the Paradise system wouldn't have another system error, crash, or go offline. As he stepped through the door, everything before his eyes seemed a bit twisted, causing a momentary distortion of Su Qi's figure as well. Moreover, Su Qi could also hear a clanging and knocking noise in his ears. It was like chains clashing against each other. The next moment, Su Qi's vision returned to normal, and he stepped into the world inside the door. 5 followers also followed Su Qi, arriving here. This is... Su Qi looked at the space in front of him, the giant display screens, and the several hidden spray devices, like a disinfection room sealed off from the world. When he turned to look at the door, behind it was a mass of chaotic darkness, where the old days churned terror, eager to swallow everything. It seemed that if he regretted his decision and wanted to go back, it was already too late. Venerable Sir, be careful. The followers didn't rush to summon the projection of the dark scripture, as it needed time to cool down. Please wait for us to probe first. Su Qi nodded slightly, and in his heart, he heard the voice of Luo Xinfu. To be honest, Luo Xinfu frowned slightly and said, I never expected to appear in a room like a disinfection chamber. Furthermore, these displays, wiring, digital clocks, and so on, it's as if we've come to a very ordinary world. What appears ordinary, when placed here, becomes quite abnormal. Luo Xinfu. In any case, be very careful after all. This is where beings greater than the extraordinary lie dormant. Su Qi actually looked at the scene, his brow twitching slightly, as it reminded him of the hospital in the anxious land. On the surface, it appeared to be an ordinary hospital housing several patients. But everything was just a facade. The patients inside were all gods, and the doctors and nurses were demigods, with the first and second floors being areas completely devoured by the old days, leaving no trace. Su Qi looked back. Now it was all too similar to that time. He really was ahead of the curve. Time passed by the minute. The followers had already discovered that the room was sealed shut, and even using spiritual energy, they couldn't break through. Su Qi didn't bother with futile efforts, as he had already seen the lock on the door of the exit, displaying a message. The door is locked. It cannot be destroyed by anything. And the only thing moving was the door behind him, which was slowly closing as time ticked by. It seemed like they were now just waiting to be matched, with players continuously entering, and once the ripple gate behind them was completely closed, that would mark the real beginning. Su Qi also noticed something else. The flow of time in this space was different from the outside. An hour here is a day in the outside world. As the ripple gate inch by inch drew shut, 2 hours had passed when it was finally sealed tight. Perhaps a large number of beings had already entered here, just in different rooms? And it was at this moment. The display screens flickered slightly. Inside, a mass of pixel blocks slowly emerged. Under Su Qi's watchful eye, they slowly gathered together to form a pixelated figure of a black and white bear that wasn't very clear. Su Qi's eyebrows raised. This black and white bear, on one side white with a gentle smile, and on the other side pitch black, the smile beneath the pixels devilish, revealing red sharp fangs. He. It let out a grating and sharp voice, accompanied by a weird laugh that seemed to rise from the soul, bringing an immediate chill. For so very long, we haven't seen this many people. Regardless, welcome to the old execution ground. These words echoed through the room via the broadcast, drilling into everyone's ears. Luo Xinfu also felt a chill, and he even had an inexplicable feeling that he was included in you all. What in the world was this? Su Qi's expression subtly shifted. He didn't know why he felt a sense of familiarity, but after thinking it over again and again, he had no memory fragments of a black and white bear. Although I know you have many questions, they are not important. As soon as I open the door, you will quickly understand what you need to do. The black and white bear, seemingly playing the role of a guide, struck a gentlemanly pose, its eyes whirring around. Of course, there are a few small steps before you can leave this door. First step. It twisted its mouth into a sinister smile. That is to kill the other people, because only one person can leave alive. With those words, the atmosphere in the other rooms probably became unbearably heavy in an instant. Several followers' eyes hardened, their gaze immediately showing a crazed resolve to die. This group of madmen had just decided on their fatal course. But as if noticing that beings from other rooms were already preparing to strike, the black and white bear narrowed its eyes and bared its teeth. Hey, just kidding. I won't allow any acts of violence against one another, even if you are enemies, bearing grudges and scores to settle. After all, the only thing that can determine your fate here is the death penalty. It delivered this with a sinister smile. It was just a black and white, pixel art style bear, yet its laughter unnerved countless people. First step. Let's cleanse you first. It snapped its fingers. The room sprayers began to emit a mist that seemed ordinary, but it made everyone, whether in terms of spiritual energy or physical body, feel as if they were rejuvenated. Everyone's condition was more or less exhausted from braving the black rain and the old days, having been stained by a lot of the black rain from the old days. Now, however, they have all been restored to optimum condition. Luo Xinfu muttered, "Why can I even feel my soul recovering? This substance being sprayed out is extraordinary." Su Qi moved slightly. He didn't need to recover anything, but the mysterious blue mark on his palm was quietly absorbing the vapor being sprayed out, which concerned him a bit. To be honest, when he discovered the blue mark, Su Qi was surprised, not knowing when he had acquired it. And no matter how he tried to activate his spiritual energy, he couldn't use it, so he had to set it aside. Unexpectedly, it had now started to absorb on its own. However, the absorption was as quick as it was fleeting. Soon the sprayers ceased their operation. Second step. The black and white bear extended its pixelated finger with sharp tips, even having exaggerated white light special effects. "I'm giving you all something." A giant gear noise echoed in the room. The walls retracted like fans, revealing a multitude of gears turning within. Everyone felt metal objects slowly appearing in their pockets. Everyone starts with a white key, which can open any door, no matter the person or their state of being. Once the door is opened, the key is considered used up. Anyone who leaves the room without getting a new key will undergo execution punishment. As for what the execution is, you'll understand once you experience it. It laughed evilly. But don't hurry, there's still the final third step. And that is surprise boxes. I've left many surprise boxes in different rooms. consider them Easter eggs. They might contain various dangerous extreme punishments, or you might receive unimaginable treasures. In any case, everything is now introduced. So, it rasped with a sinister chuckle. Welcome to this non-existent world. At that moment, Su Chi paused, seeming to know why the welcome felt familiar. It wasn't because it somewhat resembled the greetings at paradise every time you entered. It was the strange art style, laced with pixelated curiosity and bemusement. It instantly reminded Su Chi of that afternoon he first returned from the investigation bureau when he first saw the massive screen advertisement for Abyssal Paradise. The strange figure wearing a sinister mask that appeared on the screen. Click! The indestructible door opened on cue, revealing the pure white corridor inside. Su Chi pulled out his white key, holding it in his hand. Do you have your keys? Yes. The followers nodded seriously, each taking out a key, as it said. It seems we all start with a white key. But, venerable sir, there is no need to worry. They revealed a bloodthirsty, cruel smile. We'll get more from others. Good. Su Chi smiled faintly and stepped toward the room's doorway. He also had 3 steps. The first step, that would be exploiting a bug. Su Chi had already arrived outside the room. As soon as he stepped out, Su Chi looked up. The space outside the room was filled with all sorts of rotating gears adorned with various patterns. And surrounding him were maze-like corridors, with the white walls of the passages smooth and bright, forking off into more than a dozen branches. Now the main action is to find the doors of the other rooms. Su Chi gently touched each of the many passages with his finger, his expression somewhat serious. Luo Shenfu paused slightly, observing Su Chi's gestures, and seemed to detect a chaotic disorder within the sweeping motions. Although he did not sense the presence of spiritual energy, Su Chi's lips appeared as if murmuring something with unique significance. He paused slightly. Daozi, are you using traits or some other special abilities to probe? Having reached this place, one had to be cautious with every step. He had seen too many geniuses, supernovas, each not only with immense strength but also at the pinnacle in terms of cunning, calculations, and the like. In short, their every move had its significance, and every action contained underlying thoughts. And Daozi doing so was fine too.
No.
Su Chi paused, then slowly stopped his finger amidst the chaos on one of the paths. I'm using Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. This one it is. ? Luo Shenfu was a bit dumbfounded, watching Su Chi stride confidently toward that corridor. He took a deep breath and quietly consoled himself. Daozi is indeed a little different, and stepping back 10,000 paces to act as one's heart desires is also a form of great wisdom. After Su Chi entered, what followed were winding, encircling pure white walls, occasionally spotting framed paintings or other carvings on the walls, but they could not be touched or damaged, only to be observed, and the contents above were mostly indescribable, eerie things, veiled in mist, black and white, although the place here looked different from what he had imagined. However, no matter how the imagery and rules for clearing here changed, how they presented themselves, Su Chi believed this was the final threshold leading to the final land. At the same time, Su Chi also constantly monitored the pollution value within his line of sight. It had been fluctuating around 400, especially since he didn't know how many people had entered this door after the dark zone was opened. The fluctuations became even more intense. It seems the outside world has officially started, and it's intense, and someone here must have touched upon new doors. Su Chi quickly found a door. This door bore an air of innocence with doodled patterns on it, seeming like a pure and innocuous door, yet it always gave Su Chi a terrifyingly abnormal vibe. Lord Venerable Yi Ju, the 5 followers said softly, please take this. They summoned forth the dark scripture in unison, the scripture floating in the air, rapidly flipping through pages, and soon from within, a heart fell out. What's this? Su Chi paused. The rotten heart. The followers grasped it and handed it to Su Chi. Everything here will affect the descent of the abyss power, and when it's completely decayed, the dark power of the abyss will surge like a flood. Understood. The abyss also had a set of methods to judge the pollution value. And the standard in the present world was the world tree withered leaf, the decayed leaves also indicating the pollution value. These three characters, they were not just a mere set of numbers, each point representing earth-shattering changes. So, before arrival, the best way to reduce the pollution value was to weaken and eliminate as much of the abyss power as possible. And while Su Qi stood by the door, caressing a key in his hand, he was not in a hurry to insert it. "What's the matter?" Luo Xinfu inquired. "I want to do an experiment." Su Qi pulled out a white key and inserted it into the lock, and the door opened in response. After inserting the key, it could not be pulled out, seemingly acknowledged as consumed. And standing in the doorway, looking inside, there was a misty layer of water vapor, like the iridescent film of bubbles when blowing them, covering the surface. "See if you can enter." The followers nodded. At this moment they carried no keys, and when they approached the film, about to step inside, suddenly, they were enveloped by a lethal, dangerous aura, as if the moment they forcefully entered, they would encounter something terrible. "Lord Yizhu, it is impossible. I felt as if a hand gripped my heart just now." Su Qi paused. "That figures, such flaws shouldn't exist." He handed to each of them a white key. "You go in first and wait for me." "Yes." The followers didn't refuse. As long as the main objectives weren't affected, they typically wouldn't reject the Venerable's commands. After all, every Venerable they served now could possibly carry the power of Lord Evil God. Su Qi watched them enter one by one. With the door open, the film did not reject them this time, but their keys were consumed as they stepped through, transforming into white light. "So, your experiment was a bit too presumptuous." Luo Xinfu shook his head. "It's unlikely that there will be many flaws here, with all its otherworldly rules of a very high order. I, as the soul of a demigod, also feel suppressed, controlled." Luo Xinfu proceeded to seriously analyze as well. Since Daozi acted on a whim, as a Taoist guardian he naturally couldn't slack off and had to be more vigilant, assisting Daozi in assessing the situation. From the current situation, the key is very important in this place. It should be the core of everything. After all, as soon as you enter the door, it consumes, and if you don't have the key, you will be subjected to extreme punishment, while the output should come from inside the room. As a demigod, Luo Xinfu's instantaneous analysis of the situation was extremely precise. Assuming one key per person, everyone is now in the same state, but we can't rule out the possibility that there might be more advanced doors later on that require more keys. "Is that so?" Su Qi slowly hesitated, looking at his own pocket. There was one thing he had not mentioned. He had over 30 keys which had almost filled his pocket just now. Naturally, Su Qi knew the source of the keys, corresponding to those he had hidden in the Holy Light Corridor, including not just the Heavenly Destiny people but also those ancient beings. Even Luo Xinfu was counted among them. As Su Qi stepped into the membrane, the next moment, all his keys were completely consumed. It must be said, what Luo Xinfu had just mentioned was correct. The space here possessed extraordinarily unusual rules, and any attempt at concealment seemed to be easily exposed. Whether using special abilities or various special tools, nothing worked. There was no way to find loopholes. The complete consumption of the keys was proof. But after stepping inside, Su Qi revealed a smile, although it seemed like everything had failed. However, looking at the pattern on his arm, the black shadow core he possessed had not been detected. How should I put it? There's always an exception. Su Qi had owned that space for a long time, seemingly created by his spiritual power. In his dreams, he casually manipulated the black shadow, and as his spiritual power grew, the original house space also gradually expanded, becoming larger and more expansive. He had successfully used this to create the black shadow core. In fact, now that he thought about it, he knew that the black shadow space had various special and mystical qualities. First, outside the black shadow space, there was also black and white, a fog that couldn't be seen through. Second, the black shadow space could create life. Under the training and guidance of Gon Wunsue, more and more black shadows were gaining considerable intelligence. This was also a powerful force that could be foreseen by the Hustlers sect in the future. However, for now, he wouldn't mention the fact that the Black Shadow Corps had not been detected, which gave Su Qi a bold idea. At this moment, Su Qi had already stepped inside from outside the door. He immediately saw that he was in a classroom with about 70 elementary school students. Ah! Su Qi paused. Have I shrunk too? He looked at himself, small hands and small feet, holding a pen. Simultaneously, Su Qi also noticed that all the 70 or so elementary school students in the classroom looked very solemn, their emotions somber, cautious. It seemed none of these individuals were real elementary students. All of them were from various beings who had entered this space through the doors using keys. Su Qi naturally also saw a few followers. Even though they had shrunk, the ferocity and vicious aura on their faces made it clear they were not kind entities. At the same time, Su Qi also noticed one of the reasons why everyone was hesitant to make a move. On the blackboard at the front of the class were written two big characters, self-study. Below that were several scribbled red rules. 1. You are not allowed to leave your seat during self-study. 2. Do not engage in activities unrelated to studying. 3. Please prepare your homework. It will be checked after the bell rings. Violators and disobedient children will be punished. Next to the last sentence, there was a red, sinister smiling face drawn, sending a chill through everyone. You all seem to be people who entered after the door. Someone slowly spoke up, his body marked with several lines, glowing with a mystical light. What are you going to do next? This is the first door after all, so stability is the main goal. We should advance and retreat together to see what's really going on. Someone calmly said, advance and retreat together? Everyone should first take a look at the situation in the entire classroom. A little boy scoffed, his long hair fluttering as he observed the classroom. This place is a bit complicated, with heavenly destiny people, divine sons, young masters, believers with abyssal aura, and some other miscellaneous people. Can we advance and retreat together? That we haven't started killing each other is calm enough. Indeed, Su Qi agreed with him because he and several followers were sitting together, the aura emitted by the totem not hidden at all here. Around them, numerous heavenly destiny people directed their gazes, along with their followers, all harboring vigilance and hostility, their mission inevitably entailing combat against the abyss power. The followers' eyes were filled with murderous intent and cruelty, the air also as heavy as those people had described. Only Su Qi was smiling slightly, even waving at them. Make friends. Their eyes sharpened, but they just enigmatically withdrew their gazes. They had already seen that Su Qi was the Venerable. Likewise, he was their biggest enemy to date. The journey had brought them here. Heavenly destiny people, more than others, knew about the plans of the Venerables, and the various fights that had erupted with the Venerables were already destined to face these Venerables. Just look. The mystical little boy laughed at the scene. Seems like there will be a good show to watch. Who are you? A child softly asked. Or rather, which side do you take? Me? The mystical little boy said with a smile. I'm an outer god divine son. I don't take any sides. Apart from having top forces and ancient revived races in the abyss and the present world. There were also those in the chaotic camp. Simply put, it was the domains controlled by the outer gods. They considered themselves as chaotic, not participating in the struggles between evil and order, and their realms were equally chaotic, internally divided and conflicted. Only when a threat to themselves arose would they unite. The mystical boy's words made the atmosphere heavier, the conversation less harmonious, and they remained seated. Gradually, silence began to settle in, and while no one made any rash moves, they had already pulled out their homework, currently completing it. Su Qi scanned the room, saw no acquaintances, and was not in a hurry to take out his homework like the others, but was gathering all the information at a glance. Although everyone had turned into children, it was clear that no one's strength was limited. A burst could easily flip the classroom and the entire school. However, No one knew the consequences of such actions, as all appearances were deceptive, and no one dared to act rashly. Better do the homework first, let me see. Su Chi looked at the homework. Tisk. They really know how to pose questions. The homework was not extensive, just 3 questions, but clearly, it made everyone frown. The first question was, which came first, the chicken or the egg? The second question was, if the wood on a ship is gradually replaced until none of the original wood remains, is it still the same ship? Well, great. All philosophical questions. Su Chi raised an eyebrow. These questions seemed like puzzles for elementary students, but in reality, there were no elementary students present, and everyone knew the core difficulty of these questions. That is, there are no standard answers. And Su Chi wasn't in a hurry. Looking at the third question, it said, based on the hand-drawn painting behind the classroom, create a painting freely. People turned around. The back of the classroom had always been covered by a curtain, and at that moment, a child sitting in the last row solemnly stretched out his hand, lifted the curtain. In the next moment, everyone felt a chill crawl over their bodies. Dark as the abyss, the twisted abstract lines reminiscent of squirming worms, and the bright red paint that seemed still wet, streaming down, bloodily staining the ground. Su Chi looked at the painting, and under the protection of his spiritual eyes, he might have been the only one not affected by it. I don't know why. Su Chi always felt that this painting, its style, or rather the twisted lines, seemed familiar to him. The question mark on it indicated the word ceiling. However, now wasn't the time to ponder this. The most important thing was to complete the assignment. No one knew when the alarm would go off. 3 assignments. Su Chi lifted his pen, twirling it between his fingers, and suddenly noticed a fluctuation in the Luo Shinfu. Mr. Luo, what's up? Do you have an idea? I was just looking at these questions. They bring back memories. The Luo Shinfu paused. During a saint's sermons, there would often be similar questions about the rivers and everything in the universe, vast and boundless Taoist scriptures, with no so-called correct answers, but every person who could respond would manifest their own Taoist scripture and gain an insight, a descent of understanding. Su Chi pondered. Are you saying that my answer might trigger subsequent changes? Maybe. The Luo Shinfu was uncertain. After all, this is the battlefield of the world ship. There's nothing ordinary here. Su Chi. All right. The first 2 questions are purely philosophical issues. No matter how you answer them, they're flawed. The Luo Shinfu was also helping Su Chi with the homework. I suggest looking at it from a broader perspective, expanding and encompassing higher levels, stepping outside the question itself. Plus, you need to move faster. I have a feeling there's not much time for answering. No problem at all. I'm the best at stepping outside the question itself. Su Chi made an okay gesture, confidently picked up the pen, and wrote. The chicken came first out of necessity. The Luo Shinfu. What is this? Then Su Chi reached out and wrote 4 big characters on the second question. I don't know. The Luo Shinfu's eyes widened. So careless. You're definitely playing around. Su Chi quickly moved on to the third question, preparing to sketch the previous painting with a pencil. Suddenly, he paused. What's wrong? Su Chi's brow twitched. I don't have any memory of that painting. He was certain he had memorized every aspect of that painting, but now as he was about to start, he had no impression of it in his mind, and no matter how hard he tried to remember, he just couldn't recall it. And the Luo Shinfu also furrowed his brows slightly. It seems, I can't remember it either. Indeed. His tone carried a heavy weight as he mentioned 2 words, old days. The painting has been covered by the old days, its traces lost, so no matter how we gaze at it or try to recall it, it will not leave a memory in our minds. And more. He turned his head toward the wall behind him, where the painting on the wall had become blurred, covered with a copious amount of blood, obscuring the previous painting. The Luo Shinfu suddenly paused, looking at Su Chi, who was bent over busily, his hand flying with the watercolor pen. Did you remember something? No, I'm just creating freely. The Luo Shinfu strangely looked at the painting Su Chi was creating, a young boy holding a Gatling with various weapons strapped to his back. His body covered with mecha armor, with bizarre runes, tools, transforming devices, and so on. Let's not talk about how odd this painting is. Who is this little boy? Su Qi stroked his chin. How do I put it? I don't know either. He paused. I just subconsciously needed such an image, or perhaps, maybe this is what I just saw. The Luo Xinfu stared at the abstract painting. If this is the painting from before, I might as well write the name backwards. Phew. Su Qi exhaled easily. Anyway, it's very okay. Finished perfect. The Luo Xinfu. You, the Luo Xinfu sighed, are so far off the right path. Way too careless no matter what. Let's not talk about whether it's right, just say if it was fast. And at this moment, the others were also frowning, seemingly having reached the third question and unable to remember the painting on the wall. When they turned around, they too realized. The painting had been covered with bloody blood, and it was impossible to see clearly. But they were all individuals with extraordinary abilities, quickly recalling every detail from the moment they entered. There was no question without a reason. If the painting could not be remembered, then the clues had to be hidden around them. In fact, they were correct. Su Qi immediately noticed the patterns on the classroom's curtains, the little flowers on the duty roster on the blackboard, and various incomplete designs on the textbooks, as well as the childlike designs on the door he saw before entering. All hinted at the true information of that painting. But they were all incomplete, disconnected. All anyone could do was try to restore them as much as possible. However, it didn't matter. Su Qi believed he had restored it quite well. He slowly closed the workbook, his gaze fixed outside the classroom. Footsteps were slowly approaching. At the same time, in this moment, the classroom bell in the top right corner rang out loud and clear. The smart ones had already put down their pens the instant they heard the footsteps, but some were still a beat too slow. Even as the alarm went off, they hadn't put down their pens, thinking they could draw a few more strokes before the person entered. But the door was suddenly kicked open with a bang. All those who hadn't put down their pens felt a chill. The person walking in had a strangely sagging big head, and although he looked a bit abnormal, he at least had a human form. But the next moment, his eyes immediately locked onto those few who hadn't put down their pens. He sketched a weird angle with his mouth corners, spitting out a few stiff words, as if he hadn't spoken in a long time, hoarse, obscure. Disobeying orders, punishment is due. Boom! The seats of these individuals suddenly tightened with several straps, pinning them down. Their faces drained of color. They tried to use their spiritual energy to break free, but found they couldn't escape at all, despite the straps being ordinary. At the same time, there was a mass of gears revealed beneath their seats, bearing the pattern of black and white bears, and sharp, hissing laughter echoed. The next instant, mechanical black and white bears appeared beneath their seats, gripping their legs fiercely. In a flash, all the rule breakers were dragged down. What lay below, nobody knew. Screams could only be heard rising up. Two words surfaced in everyone's mind. Extreme punishment. So that was it. Every step was filled with lethal threats. Any violation of the rules would result in being dragged away for extreme punishment. The teacher with many eyes entered the room, not uttering a word, and began collecting homework one by one. He gathered all the homework and calmly walked towards the exit of the classroom. Before he left, he turned his head, slowly peering at everyone with his multitude of eyes. The following 45 minutes are break time, during which, find the owner of the painting. Kill him. These 3 words seemed to make everyone feel an intense chill. Hee. How interesting. The young boy with a divine aura also curved the corners of his mouth. I sense an abyss-like chill emanating from him. He looked at the heavenly destiny people. He wants to find the owner of the painting. Perhaps it has something to do with your present world. The heavenly destiny people's expressions darkened. They too sensed the danger, as the world tree withered leaf had already warned them. The being the abyss wanted to kill must certainly be the one they needed to save. Let's go. We only have 45 minutes. Now it's a matter of who can find the owner of this painting quickly. They all stepped out in unison, heading out of the classroom. Su Qi also began to step out. Exiting the classroom, everything became clear. There was only this one school building, and they were at the top floor, the 6th. There were 5 classes on each floor. The students from other classes too, because of the recess bell, had started to exit their classrooms. But everyone's expressions stiffened, none daring to act recklessly. Every student here seemed off. Their expressions were strange and terrifying, with a smile before stepping out of the classroom. Their eyes and bodies were full of spots. Yet once they stepped out, they all returned to normal, as if they were just ordinary elementary school students, merrily heading downstairs in groups. Because these 45 minutes, though called a break, actually included exercises. The followers seemed pleased. Venerable Ju. How so? Su Qi looked at them, as they silently released their spiritual energy, summoning the projection of the dark scripture. The dark scripture faintly emitted a sinister aura. Here are all ancient beings from the abyss. Each one was once a Sequence 1 or Sequence 2 demon, including that teacher with the big head. Its true identity is... The dark scripture contained guidance on the identity. An abyss demigod, sequence thinker, the bishop of the god of anxiety. It has the power to drag everyone into a vortex of unease with its eyes, leading even to suicide. That made sense. No wonder the questions it posed were so philosophical, and indeed fitting for a subordinate of the god of anxiety, using tactics that closely resembled its masters. So, the one it's searching for. Su Qi murmured softly. The followers let out a cold snicker. Yes, based on the current guidance from the dark scripture, plus the fragment we've obtained, inscribed with the god's palace, war emblem. Under the lead of the god's palace, a powerful united force naturally formed. An army composed of the gods and all the power they could muster. It's highly possible that we're dealing with a demigod. The followers sneered. All we need to do is find and kill him. Su Qi did not speak. Instead, Luo Xinfu shook his head and said somberly, Demigod? No. I've seen that emblem. It's not a pattern that a demigod could possess. It belongs to a high-ranking god. It's very likely one of the powerful deities of the god's palace, who, either due to serious injuries or some other reason, was forced to hide among the ancient abyss powers. His power allows him to remain undetected by the abyss demons. That's why we are the breakthrough point. Su Qi snapped his fingers. Understood. We need to find him and then rescue him from this group of abyss elementary school students. The difficulty is substantial, Luo Xinfu observed each little boy and girl around him. Though they all appeared as normal children, there was an unsettling aura about each of them. Among all these diverse appearances, it was impossible to pin down that one special existence. Is the difficulty substantial? Su Qi pondered slightly. He felt that, in such a situation, his most excessive action would just be to take a quick glance around, directly locking on to a little boy at the playground who was assembling. The boy was unremarkable, his meek presence in any spot as if to disappear into the crowd, barely noticeable, as if he would vanish if one didn't pay close attention. Let's go, we're heading down as well. Su Qi walked toward the playground. Based on his observations, these ancient children on campus seemed to have no memory of the past, except for the big-headed teacher who seemed to carry fragmented memories, constantly searching for the owner of the drawing. If that was the case, Su Qi rated the power of the black and white bear and the entire gate world even higher. It was possible to turn demigods, even gods, into NPCs among them. What exactly was this place, and what kind of existence was the black and white bear? At that moment, the big-headed teacher also stepped out of the office, accompanied by 2 other teachers, one man bloated all over, and one woman with a split mouth. Her skin on her face looked like it was about to sag. Another 2 demigod demons. The followers recited the guidance from the dark scripture in cooperation. Blaze Thorn Demon and Thorny Demon. All right, got it. The entire school was filled with powerful abyssal beings. unlike the old world powers that suppressed each other one-on-one. Now, the entire school was suppressing that one person, with 3 demigods, hundreds of sequence 1 and 2 beings. Although under the rules of this gate world, they all appeared to act like ordinary people. But no one knew what would happen once a battle erupted. Speaking of which, teachers. Su Chi took a few steps forward, grabbed the edge of one of their garments. The teacher's terrifying gaze turned to him, eerily looking at Su Chi. "What is it?" she asked hoarsely. "What happens if we don't find the owner of the drawing in 45 minutes? She revealed a horrifying smile. "If you don't finish, there will be a little game to play." "What kind of game?" Su Chi asked curiously. "Of course, it's hide and seek." When Su Chi arrived at the playground, he stood according to his class while the others were already observing everything around them, each searching for people who matched their clues. Only he was contemplating what to do next. The problem now was everyone in the school was an enemy, and once the little boy was found, he would likely face pursuit by everyone. But if they didn't find him in 45 minutes, they, too, would have to play an 18-plus game of hide and seek. Of course, by then, it was likely to be bloody violence rather than anything risque. As for the 70-plus participants present, they each had their own thoughts and were searching for the owner of the painting. Su Chi's gaze slowly shifted to the little boy. The boy had started doing gymnastics like everyone else, showing nothing unusual. Time was counting down. Su Chi was also preparing his plan on how to face the upcoming campus battle royale. Although Su Chi was in deep thought, everyone else was also searching. But even during physical exercises, danger lurked at every step. Someone was leading the movements in front, and everyone copied the actions. Should there be a mistake or a failure to keep up, all students' gazes would suddenly turn cold and fixate on the person who erred, then slowly withdraw. "A first mistake is a warning," went the saying. "But make one more or several, and like before, you might be dragged into the so-called gear space to face extreme punishment." Su Chi saw the person being watched drenched in sweat, fearing to end up unlucky like those few in the classroom before. But as they feared, all the attention turned into an extreme mental stress, and the person leading the exercises accelerated their movements. Someone eventually could not keep up. He shivered all over because everyone's gaze was now fixed on him. Under the scrutiny of the crowd, the sky dome suddenly cracked open, revealing an enormous array of gears. On it, a gigantic black and white mechanical bear, over 50 meters tall, seemed to crouch there. Then it extended a huge paw, fiercely slamming down. The man's face changed drastically. "Extreme punishment!" he roared, running madly. His spiritual energy burst forth, and he leaped into the air. Even with a small body, it didn't impact the strength he exerted. At the same time, the massive paw was locking in on him, hammering down constantly, and the other children also seemed to stir, each grabbing various items and throwing them at the man. Though the man had made a mistake, his strength wasn't weak, and he wasn't hit by the black and white bear. In the midst of urgency, he was also desperately searching for a path to survival. Seeing a winding key above the bear's head, his face lit up with hope. Does this mean there's a time limit to the extreme punishment? Even if it was extreme punishment, it seemed there was a chance to survive if one could hold out until the end. Seeing hope, he ignored all the objects the children were throwing and focused solely on coping with the black and white bear's paw descending from the sky dome. But he made a grave mistake. Luo Xinfu's voice said softly, "He's gone." Those items that were clearly nothing more than pencils, erasers, and marbles took on a strangeness the moment they were thrown, becoming bizarrely transfigured, biting at his bursting spiritual energy like burrowing worms. In that instant, his outburst of spiritual energy destabilized. Dragged down by those eerie objects, his body froze, his face lifted in horror as he saw the towering black shadow. He bellowed, expending all his spiritual energy in a final defense. But the next moment, smack! The black and white mechanical bear's enormous paw pressed hard against the ground. And when it lifted, His entire body had been effortlessly crushed to a pulp. The black and white mechanical bear's paw only had blood trickling down slowly. The black and white bear laughed with a hee-hee-hee, slowly withdrawing from the gaping gears in the sky dome. And after it closed up, it seemed again like an ordinary world. "Did you see that, Daozi?" "I'm not blind," Su Chi muttered to himself. "Based on what just happened, all violations of the rules in this world are disposed of with extreme punishment." Furthermore, Su Chi looked around, including at the Abyss teachers and the Abyss elementary school students. They must abide by it too, or else face extreme punishment as well. From their recent actions, it was clear they were already quite familiar with this. Additionally, Su Chi glanced at the person turned to mush. While extreme punishment has the power to kill in one blow, there indeed seems to be a chance to live, which depends on real-time reactions and various choices. And, finally, Su Chi's eyes narrowed slightly. That person had not died. Even though he was ground into mince, it was just an appearance. The question marks above him indicated that traces of his existence seemed to vanish somewhat. In other words, could it be that the so-called extreme punishment didn't kill the life, but the trace of existence? This point remained open to question. But Su Chi believed there was a high probability because all the Abyss monsters in this school, including that little boy, were probably as hard to kill as the strength encountered in the previous world fragments, with a sequence that hadn't broken off only capable of sealing. But if existence were erased, devoured by the old days, that would be their true death. This very moment, the exercise session had ended, and in the remaining time, everyone's eyes sharpened, starting to search immediately. Having witnessed the handling of 2 instances of extreme punishment, they all felt the imminence of crisis. Even the enigmatic outer god Divine Sun's eyes twinkled faintly, beginning to piece together previous clues. The many Abyss elementary school students, at the moment of the black and white bear's appearance, became extraordinarily bizarre, as if true strength was about to awaken. But once the black and white bear left, they reverted back to their innocent elementary school selves, running and chasing on the playground. Even stepping on the patch of mince on the playground was met with glee, stomping on it as if it were merely splashing water. It seemed at this time that everyone was an innocent child, and everything that had just occurred was merely an illusion. Su Chi watched the scene pensively, then approached the little boy. The boy stood alone, out of place with the others, seemingly without memory. Seeing Su Chi approach, he was somewhat cautious. Su Chi did know how to strike up a conversation with kids. He pulled out a stick. "Buddy, want one?" Luo Shenfu. The little boy also seemed bewildered, looking at the lollipop in Su Chi's hand, hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. Thank you, but I don't eat." His eyes held an indiscernible sharpness and an instinctive wariness. Yet, Su Chi slipped it into his coat pocket. "Take it, we're all friends here." The little boy was somewhat confused. "Do we know each other? It seems you really don't remember anything. We used to go to school together." Su Chi smiled. "Don't you remember these shoes under your feet? We bought them together, Adidas. And I know about some of the minor health issues you have." Su Chi spoke as if he knew everything, which left the little boy bewildered. Luo Shenfu watched this scene, knowing full well that Su Chi was making things up, since from the beginning, both of them had received the same information and clues. Moreover, all NPCs seemed to have lost their original memories, becoming as innocent as children. Only when the black and white bear appeared, and in that classroom, did the powers and traces of the Abyss manifest on them. However, Luo Shenfu was wrong. Everything Su Chi had just said was not made up. The little boy was somewhat shocked. "How did you know? I have eye problems." "Of course, I helped you register at the hospital, got the medicine for you." Su Chi counted on his fingers. "You have now amblyopia, color blindness, glaucoma, and occasionally see various bizarre things." The little boy shuddered. Everything had been accurately mentioned. This was indeed his condition. In this school, he constantly felt terror, saw strange things, yet a voice compelled him to keep this secret deeply guarded. He had tried to seek help from the teachers, but whenever he approached them, intending to speak, his eyes would hurt terribly, and the originally kind teachers would turn into terrifying monsters. It was utterly horrifying. Beside the teachers, the students also transformed into demon-like figures, grotesquely elongated. When he timidly refrained from speaking and left, upon looking back, the teachers and other students would have returned to normal, playing and running around, smiling happily like ordinary children. He didn't know how long he had been here, but everything he experienced made him tread on thin ice. And now, this boy was actively approaching him, revealing so many of his secrets. "See, I told you we're friends," Su Chi already laughed, patting his shoulder. "By the way, what's your name?" "Luo Shenfu?" The little boy bowed slightly. "Ma Yang." "All right, Ma Yang," Su Chi gently said. "My name is Su Buxian." He glanced briefly at the playground, where the three teachers' gazes were slowly sweeping across, and time was also fading, with less than 10 minutes left until the break ended. Everyone seemed to be frantically searching, making contact with the various elementary students. The sky dome was also gradually darkening. It seemed that once the time was up, something was about to happen. Su Chi looked at this scene and softly said, "So, Ma Yang, do you want to leave here?" Ma Yang paused, then slowly nodded. When Su Chi mentioned that he could see strange things, he had already subconsciously considered Su Chi as a sort of companion, especially since his eyes didn't hurt when talking with him, void of the chilling, terrifying feeling. "So do you know how to leave?" Ma Yang shook his head, and after hesitating for a while, he whispered, "My friend might know." "Your friend?" Su Chi was surprised. "He has never appeared in front of me, but whenever I'm asleep, he would write notes under my diary." Su Chi paused. "I see." Ma Yang still wanted to speak, but Su Chi also noticed that other followers had already approached. "All right, take the lollipop and go play for a while." Su Chi patted the dazed Ma Yang, stood up, and walked away. "I'll meet with your friend later." Under Ma Yang's perplexed gaze, Su Chi joined up with the followers. "Venerable One, with these fragmented clues and information, it's virtually impossible to find the owner of that drawing among these hundreds of children." The followers' expressions carried a trace of chill. "And although this place is filled with the strength of the abyss, they have no related memories and are restricted by the school rules. If not found, when the time comes," followers spoke in a tense voice, "it seems we'll enter a new dangerous phase. Right now our only option is to get through this phase first, and then see what comes next." Su Chi snapped his fingers. "I'll listen to you all. Moreover, it looks like the whole campus is covered this time." He looked up at the darkening sky dome and the thin mist that gradually rose as time passed. Playing hide and seek? He recalled what that female teacher had said before and couldn't help feeling a bit excited. At this moment, Luo Shenfu spoke with a tone of doubt and contemplation. "Daozi, there's something I don't understand. What you just mentioned, his friend. Ah, you're still thinking about that? That plotline has passed already." Su Chi was eager to proceed. "It's time to play the game now. Luo Shenfu, your body might have shrunk to a child's size, but you're not actually a child. Is there a need to be so lively and even slightly expectant?" He realized he really didn't understand Su Buxian, this youngster who suddenly blended into the immortal path and became Daozi. "Okay, let me explain a bit." Su Chi smiled gently. "Simply put, they usually turn into ordinary children, but at certain times or places, they recover their memories, usually at times of separation or safety. That's why he has been hiding for so long. Likewise, they must also complete the school procedures and rules, and if anyone breaks these rules, they will face extreme punishment. What extreme punishment erases is not their lives but their traces. As their memories diminish more and more, they'll gradually be erased from existence. They must find and kill Ma Yang to leave this place. And Ma Yang, Su Chi, felt that his true consciousness did not wish to leave this place actively. Rather than saying the multitude of monsters of the Abyss School were hunting him, It would be more accurate to say he was suppressing those hundreds of demons and 3 demigods. 10 minutes quickly passed. The sky dome turned as dark as ink. Despite the absence of dark clouds, the visibility was as dim as if it were the apocalypse, and a thin layer of strange, dark purple mist rose. If one had to liken the atmosphere to something, it bore a bit of a Minka Academy vibe. Boom, boom, boom. The school bell was ringing, and the large clock on the school building's wall emitted the sound of turning gears. An announcer's voice sounded, with the intonation of a circus performer. Dear cute little kids, now it's time for some fun and games. We will be playing hide and seek based on the classes, although I'd prefer to call it cat and mouse. Now, please pay attention. Congratulations to the first graders of Class 9. You have been chosen as the mice to hide, while the other classes will spread their claws as cats. His voice carried a hint of laughter. As mice, you must try your best not to be caught by the cats, because if you are caught, you will be punished. And now, the announcer's voice came through. Count down 5 minutes. Cats, cover your eyes. Mice, it's time for you to hide. The clock ticked crisply. The countdown had begun. The chosen first graders of Class 9 were, of course, none other than Su Chi and his classmates. Su Chi complained, "Does this black and white bear have to multitask as an announcer too?" He naturally recognized the voice, and he also looked around, noticing all the elementary students uniformly covering their eyes with their hands. But at the same time, Su Chi also noticed the dark, ominous mist enveloping them, seeping towards them, transforming into something sinister, and it seemed that the breath of the abyss was recovering. Their terrifying faces were about to materialize. The time for hiding was not abundant. After a dull chime of the bell, the announcement echoed bizarrely across the entire campus. Now, the game has begun, and at this moment, in the playground, numerous students, including teachers, slowly lowered their hands. Their eyes slightly reddened, and their shadows under the hazy light appeared eerie, elongated, and twisted like monsters. Only Ma Liang's eyes carried a hint of godliness. His body exuded an aura of nihility. His shadow too twisted and faded, but his originally innocent gaze had slowly vanished, and a profound consciousness was gradually restoring. Now, he was no longer the elementary student Ma Liang, but the true will of a god had returned. All his past memories had also surfaced. Su Buxian's earlier conversation also appeared in his mind. At such a critical juncture, Ma Liang pulled out a lollipop from his pocket, extended his hand, and drew out a piece of paper rolled around a thin tube. It bore a location. This time, it seems an interesting person has come, but he probably doesn't know yet. He looked at the sky dome and surrounding abyss monsters and everything in the school. What this place signifies and what will happen when he contacts me. Ma Liang slowly began to walk, progressing amid abyss demons. Meanwhile, Su Chi was sitting in their original first-grade 9th class classroom. He sat at a desk and threw aside the curtain, looking at the painting in front of him, now smeared with blood. Choosing this place to hide is indeed a bold choice, Luo Xinfu mused. Is it because the most dangerous place is the safest? This was the classroom they had stayed in, where ordinary people wouldn't choose to hide.
No.
Su Chi paused. I just find the hide and seek game uninteresting. Compared to cat and mouse, I prefer to take a defensive position and mount a counterattack. Luo Xinfu was startled. What are you going to do? Don't be reckless. This place, its rules are everything. Once the game starts, it means the cats have absolute control. It can't be countered just with strength, and there are many of them. Su Chi. It's okay, we have people too, and who says we have to fight them? A group of demons, 3 demigods, and Ma Liang, a true deity, had to obey all the rules of this space. Otherwise, they would all be subject to extreme punishment by the black and white bear. It was said before that this is a very special place. All extraordinary beings here, demigods or even gods, seem to be bound by certain rules. And Su Chi naturally knew this answer. That is, the old days which can erase all existence. Now, Su Chi still had limited understanding of this place, but he believed he would soon get the answers. The door gently moved, A figure pushed open the door and stepped in. Maoyang looked at Su Qi sitting in front of his painting, and softly spoke, "Can you see it?" Through that unclear blood and the chaos and abnormalities mixed in, capturing the real painting into your view. Su Qi said, "Don't say it. I really can't." Maoyang calmly said, "Because it has been devoured by the old days, disappeared from existence. Even if you see it, you won't retain any memory." He looked at Su Qi. "Since you could enter this place, you should know about the old days." Su Qi gestured with his fingers. "I know a bit. That's enough, and likewise." Maoyang softly said, "As long as you can depict this painting, you can leave this school." Su Qi stroked his chin. "Copy a painting that doesn't exist? It seems unlikely, but based on my observations, it seems that over time, clues about the painting will gradually appear through various incomplete pieces." "Oh? What have you noticed?" Maoyang looked at Su Qi with interest. In the classroom, the books, the blackboard, etc., all had fragments. "That's one," Su Qi muttered to himself. "And at the playground, the flags wafting in the middle, the mechanical doll making movements, and the graffiti on the walls, all had parts of the painting, that's two." Maoyang's eyes slightly changed. Everyone was trying hard to follow the mechanical doll's movements since they were extremely difficult. Minor lapse or mistake would result in extreme punishment. Yet he still noticed those minutiae. And, based on those fragmented parts, Su Qi paused. This game should be the third, which is the last step. The remaining parts of the painting should be... Su Qi looked outside. Among those abyss demons, Maoyang also listened to the dull sounds outside, the muffled movements, the smashing sounds, softly saying, "You really are an interesting little fellow, and different from others. But still, I have to ask one more question." Maoyang looked at Su Qi. "I feel two quite contradictory forces from you. One is..." He pointed slightly. The world tree withered leaf on Su Qi began to float, flickering with a gleaming golden red light. "Your heavenly destiny people identity. The other is..." Maoyang pointed again. The sleeve button on Su Qi's arm automatically unhooked, revealing a totem that was emitting dark energy. "Your abyss power." Su Qi was not conscious of being seen through. If the other party could fully see through him, he wouldn't have pointed out only these two aspects. After all, things like immortal path, angels, ancient gods weren't mentioned at all. He said, "Humans are inherently inclusive. I work among the heavenly destiny people, and it's also nice to deliver takeout to the abyss. I can see everyone's colors, your identities, positions, and whether you are good or evil. I know them all. Most of those heavenly destiny people are white, possessing a sense of duty and responsibility. The abyss monsters, on the other hand, are purely black and red, evil, bizarre, bloodthirsty." Su Qi asked expectantly, "What about me? Your color is..." Maoyang fell silent. "There is a divine bird in the world that has vividly colored feathers, and each feather can split into different personas, each with different personalities and abilities. And you have surpassed it. Your colors are heavily mixed, complex, and blurry." Su Qi muttered, "So does that represent good or evil?" "Probably closer to good." Maoyang hesitated, using the word closer. He didn't say more, slowly plucking out one of his eyes, which was a glass eye. "Take this, go to my place, find that brush, and try to paint the picture as best as you can, and that will open the gate to leave." Su Qi reached out and took it. "But why don't you do it yourself since it's your painting and you also have so many clues?" Maoyang just smiled, his hollow eyes betraying a different emotion. "Because it's not time yet." Su Qi paused slightly, wanting to ask more. But Maoyang pointed outside. "We don't have much time left. The longer we wait in this hide-and-seek game, the more powerful they will become, and the crazier." Knowing Maoyang would not answer further, Su Qi was not too bothered. The questions that appeared above his head were enough for him to digest. 1 minute later, he watched as Su Qi left the classroom, and Maoyang's eyes revealed a strange contemplative hue. How odd! This little guy. His colors are chaotic, disordered, unfathomable. There's even a large mass of dense black that exceeds everyone else's. That blackness is more evil than all the abyss monsters combined. But greater than this darkness is a color that shines like starfire, even suppressing the very ink black. Heavenly destiny people, the abyss power has already entered the ancient gate. That means the strategy, spanning countless ages, is about to converge. Ancient times, beyond the dimensions of the abyss and the present world, the most horrific, most mysterious force in that final battle. The abyss seeks to use its terrifying strength to utterly destroy the present world. At that last moment, the World Tree's Fire Seed Plan will activate. It would release the ancient times, along with numerous horrific gods, demigods, and extraordinary demons, to mutually annihilate. Along with much of the present world and the core forces, all submerge in the ancient times, erasing all memories and traces. It's akin to hitting the pause button, and upon restarting, countless ages will have passed. They undoubtedly were. The defeated ones in this battle seeing no hope, and now postponed to these later times just for that pitiful variable and another chance to start over. Is it just prolonged despair at this moment? Or can we find a new hope? Ma Liang softly said. This war is about to begin anew. By the time Su Qi reached Ma Liang's residence, he had already avoided wave after wave of, not abyss elementary school students, but abyss monsters. The avoidance was simple. Gan Wansue rose from the shadows on the ground. Sect Hierarch, as per your instructions, the Shadow Army has sequentially mobilized, creating distractions in various places to attract the attention of abyss demons and record the incomplete pictures on their bodies. Okay. Noted, remember to divert these to the locations of the followers. Give them something to do. Understood. Luo Shinfu watched Gan Wansue slowly disappear into the shadows again, his eyebrows tightly furrowed. I'm getting more and more confused. What are these? It's the power of the immortal path. It's normal not to understand. Luo Shinfu. What the hell does this have to do with the immortal path? He sighed and did not probe further. By now, he had gradually realized that Daozi before him possessed an unfathomable personality and various hidden abilities. However, the problem was not significant. After all, Daozi was only 7th rank, and his strength limited the hidden things and the enemies. He should be able to handle it. In any case, we already have a way to leave this door, said Luo Shinfu. It should be simpler now. That's not necessarily true. Su Qi, hidden within the compartments in Ma Liang's room, found a brush according to the method taught by Ma Liang. The brush had a hint of divinity, and Su Qi looked at its information box. Divine brush. Instant specific effect. To outline the paintings of the god, Ma Liang. After infusing spiritual energy, you can start painting at any location. It really is a straightforward name, Su Qi muttered to himself, and moreover, he also saw a deep red warning beneath which came from the ancient paradise system. Warning. When the divine brush begins to draw, all abyss monsters will enter a frenzied state. Warning. You are outlining a painting that does not exist, and once you successfully draw it, you will be tainted with the ominous from the old days. Note. Every individual who successfully leaves this gate world will receive a reward key from the black and white bear, and the successful painter will receive a special reward. Here it came. The main quest of the gate world seemed all too familiar. Still, Su Qi also noticed that ancient paradise mentioned the black and white bear, serving as both the punisher of extreme punishments and the issuer of rewards. The black and white bear acted like a GM in this ancient gate. The old days seemed to be a more mysterious and terrifying power higher than the abyss and the present world, favoring neither side. Much like a recycling bin, traces swallowed by the old days were like deleted files thrown into the recycling bin. This door should be left now. Su Qi, carrying the brush, walked towards the door. From Ma Liang, he had already gotten a lot of information, not just in words, but also from the question mark above his head. Ancient Gate. It was a place where the gods and the abyss perished together, where traces were erased, buried coordinates slept, and was also the necessary route to the core land, part of what the World Tree and the Eye of Destiny were guiding. Forget it. Talking about these things is boring. To put it simply, the Abyss is a virus, the part of the present world that got infected, deleted by the gods including themselves, stored in this USB stick, the Ancient Gate. It seemed that the evil god got hold of this USB stick, plugged it into the core land, and now the detection system of the Eye of Destiny and the protection system of the World Tree have all mobilized the Heavenly Destiny people to come and seal it again. It might have been better not to explain, as it seems more confusing now. But it doesn't matter. Su Qi had already reached the rooftop of the school building. Streams of information fed back from the Shadow Army. They were unsure if it was due to their own reason or inherently special. Even if they died, were slain, they would just return to their spirit house space. After a certain time, they would be able to be summoned again. And this time would extend with their growing strength and shorten with the increase of one's spiritual power. Holding the divine brush, he began to outline directly in midair. The patterns etched directly into the air. And right when he made the first stroke, the sky dome underwent a change, a light hue piercing through the dark purple mist down. At this moment, countless abyss demons began to emit frenzied roars. The three demigods had also revealed their forms, watching this scene with endless murderous intent in their eyes. The entire school was swarmed with the aura of the abyss. Maoyang stood in the corridor of that classroom, staring at the sky dome. It has started. His strength had also recovered somewhat, but his aura was weak, his body covered in fatal injuries. In the final battle, he had been on the brink of death, dragged into the old days together with his foes, using the last bit of his strength to suppress these abyss demons. Now, let's help you out a bit. Su Qi was on the top floor, using the divine brush to trace the first stroke of the painting. At that moment, his spiritual power had reached an astonishing 1,500,000, and it was still increasing. Normally, the range of spiritual power for someone of the 7th rank should be around 100,000 to 1 million, but Su Qi, possessing 4 sequences, naturally had a much higher limit. The amount of spiritual power could greatly enhance mana, burst rate, strength, and intensity, and it actually also related to usage rate and control rate. It had been mentioned before. The spiritual energy of an ordinary person without any methods, just in a momentary burst, is generally around 0.5% of their total spiritual energy. In other words, a total spiritual energy of 1 million might burst forth 5,000 spiritual energy in an instant, used in fierce combat, assault, or instantaneous defense, and so on. For others wanting to use a large amount of spiritual energy, the main reliance is actually tools, skills, and special abilities, and so forth. At this time, every stroke Su Qi made consumed tens of thousands of spiritual energy, his 4 sequences shining brightly, and his instant burst rate was consequently higher. The outlining speed was quite fast. At the same time, one could hear the wild roars around, the sky dome growing darker, the power of demons restarting. And just as Su Qi had started less than half a minute ago, a faint voice gently rang out. I thought someone had found a way out, but it turned out to be you. It should have been mine, but to think it was grabbed ahead of time. Venerable of the Abyss. Su Qi did not need to turn around to know who it was. It was that impressive son of an outer god who had appeared suddenly, currently leaning against the wall as if he had seen through all of Su Qi's secrets, wearing a faint smile. His ability was very unique, able to disguise as anything, hence moving unimpeded in this school. But Su Qi had naturally already discovered him. After all, who else's ground would have such a big question mark? He had even deliberately kicked it when going up to the rooftop. The kid still thought his disguise was too good, and this was not even noticed. Su Qi did not expose him, and his hand movements did not stop. Since you know that I am the Venerable of the Abyss, and that I am obtaining the special reward in this gate world, what do you plan to do now? It had been mentioned before, a complete tracing of the artwork could yield a special reward. Some people just want to get a key to ensure survival and leave. More are here for more keys, even competing for special rewards. You underestimate me, and similarly, you overestimate yourself too much. The little boy gently laughed. This is the Ancient Gate, a place of non-existence, and what you are doing now is opening a passage outwards. So their power will be restored because of this. The larger the gap you open, the stronger they will become. They are currently congregating, waiting until they discover you. A terrifying power will overturn everything. Su Chi nodded. Well analyzed. So, you standing here is to pass on information to me. It doesn't matter. I like doing things on a whim. The little boy indeed matched the style of the outer gods, simply acting regardless of good or evil, following their whims. And even if you know everything, you can't stop it. Anyone else here would have less than a 3% chance of success. The assaulting demons, the murderous intent-filled demigods. Even if you are the venerable of the abyss, losing memory under the old days and only left with madness and bloodthirst, they will tear you into pieces. The little boy gently smiled. So I'm not in a hurry. Let you try first. Su Chi raised his thumb. Well, thanks for that. So what's your success rate? 50%. The boy lazily leaned against the edge of the rooftop. Just waiting for you to finish. Then I'll take my turn. Su Chi could see this guy had an arrogant pride, disdain for the present world and the abyss, and from his lineage, it seemed he also had the capital to be arrogant and unrestrained. After all, he seemed to be from one of the top races among the outer gods, much like the angel divine race. You seem certain of my failure. The little boy calmly smiled. Why not? As your outlining becomes more complete, the fluctuations here will also disperse, and that will be the moment they discover this place, and they will crazily kill towards you. Dense like hell. And your reliance? The boy turned his head slightly to look towards a hidden spot far away. Those followers have already been discovered by the demons and blocked. They can't help you at all. Su Chi glanced faintly. Nonsense. Who do you think did it? The boy turned his gaze to Su Chi. So what are you going to do now? Let me see what you can do. And if you really can succeed, I won't mind giving it to you. Fine giving. Su Chi calmly continued outlining, glanced at the time, and it was just about right. Next, Su Chi did not hide the fluctuations here, but instead burst forth the dispersed spiritual energy. Boom, boom, boom. The massive fluctuations spread out. Parts of the painting that had been outlined directly reflected with the sky dome, shattering the fog. The boy raised his eyebrows, somewhat surprised. What are you doing? Deliberately exposing yourself? Seeking death? Su Chi gently laughed. Little bro, your analysis isn't very good. It's just mediocre. Are you talking nonsense? A vein popped on the boy's forehead. Details are most important. Even though they are restoring various powerful forces, they still haven't destroyed this place. The boy frowned. So what? Su Chi paused. They run wildly on the playground, yet dare not step on the grass or the flower beds. They can roar ferociously between the playing fields. But once they enter the teaching building, they don't dare to run or make loud noise. The boy's gaze slightly darkened. It really was like that. Rules. Here, rules are above all. Su Chi looked at the small booklet. Clearly, even demons must obey all the rules here. Otherwise, they will be subjected to extreme punishment. Well, that alone is enough. The boy watched Su Chi's movements. What are you going to do? There is no perfect rule, only the person who uses it perfectly. As long as you find the pattern and mechanism within whatever demon, whatever cat and mouse. Su Chi slowly revealed a harmless smile. Then all can be killed. The boy suddenly froze his expression. He abruptly looked up at the sky dome. Because the gears had turned, a huge black and white mechanical bear had already appeared. And not only that, all around were gears appearing in every direction, a multitude of clocks. The walls of the teaching building also cracked open, revealing a multitude of saws that came slashing densely at the demons trying to pass. The ground kept splitting apart, revealing spikes below. The stairs were all crushers that could grind everything to bits. The corridors were even lined with dense execution tools, popping up one by one. The boy's eyes filled with astonishment. What is this? Su Chi, however, did not answer and instead held the pen, facing all demons with an uplifted scarlet cold eye. Far from being daunted, he even revealed a slight smile. This is the first grand obstacle course sports meet of the Su Family Army School. Boys and girls rush forward. All classmates who reach the rooftop first will receive one refrigerator. Ah no, a cup of icy lemonade. This son of an outer god. For the first time, he was somewhat at a loss for words, but his shock was quickly suppressed, watching the emerging punishment manifesting, quickly and calmly. So this is your tactic, using a multitude of school rules to cause the demons to transgress and drag them into extreme punishment. I won't ask how you did it, just why do you know about these? Su Chi gazed intently at the boy, his voice soft. Because I have the ability to see through everything. The boy's pupils dilated, his body tensing as if seen through by those eyes. This feeling of being thoroughly seen made him take the matter seriously. This guy, and the school regulations I stole from that female teacher. A small booklet appeared in Su Chi's hand. The boy. Damn you. He had been fooled. He almost believed it. If you have the booklet, why make up so much stuff? He genuinely felt like he had been seen through. Su Chi calmly put away the booklet. Okay, kid, you lie down over there for now. I'm almost done here. The boy. It seemed that, under these circumstances, it might actually succeed. Seemed like he had been shown up. Of course, everything Su Chi said was half true, half false. The booklet indeed had many rules recorded, and that was true, but in fact, it was only a small part of the whole school. The rest had been collected by Su Chi along the way. Furthermore, there was also some help provided by a certain Ma Liang, who had also contributed a lot of help. Nice. The first to see through Su Chi's strategy was Ma Liang, truly worthy of being a divine. Later, he would award him a big red flower and a certificate for the 3 good students. The outline drawings were converging to become complete, every line condensing vast spiritual energy, emitting strange fluctuations. At the same time, reflecting against the sky dome, casting light above on the sky dome, connecting with the drawing, a door slowly appeared. As long as Su Chi completed the last 10%, the door would solidify completely, opening an exit. And at this moment, the first player to pass had already emerged. The big head teacher was charging at the locks of the rooftop door, looking at Su Chi's figure, growling with a murderous aura. There were no rules on the teaching building rooftop, only breaking the locks was required. Su Chi listened to its roar. It seems the first challenger is somewhat impatient about the prize they are about to receive. Let's see how long it takes to break through this lock. The next moment after Su Chi finished speaking, 2 more teachers appeared, exuding a dense dark energy, and with a bang, they slammed against the lock. Crack! A significant crack appeared on the iron door's lock. The boy by the side watched the scene with amusement. You think you can keep rambling and everything will be fine? They're about to break through. What can you do about it? I'm not alone. At that moment, Su Chi had completed the painting. The moment the brush fell, the painting burst forth, spewing light particles that shot towards the sky dome, solidifying the door. The exit was created. However, above it, there was a clock face, showing only 1 minute before the door would close. Click! As soon as Su Chi put away his brush, the door was violently shattered, and 3 figures charged straight at him. True to the form of a demigod, instantly bursting forth were 3 triumphant players, male and female. Su Chi watched as they rushed towards him with murderous intent, the air around him tensing, every possible escape route around him locked down. And at that moment, the boy stretched out his hand. A fantastical power abruptly shrunk them to inches, instantly turning them into little animals, 3 black mice. We only have 15 seconds. Let's go. The others then emerged from their hiding places and ran towards the door. Su Chi gave him a glance. Feeling Su Chi's gaze, the boy gently smiled. Since you've asked for my help, I'll assist you this once. After so many years, it's rare to find someone pleasing to the eye and capable of surprising me. Where does this memory come from? Su Chi asked. The boy paused. Didn't you just say you're not alone? He confidently waved his hand. Is there a second one here who can help you? Su Chi gave a thumbs up. That logic isn't flawed. However, in the ring space on Su Qi's finger, Luo Shinfu, which had been gathering strength for half a day, ready to burst forth, fell into a long silence. Am I not a person? Am I really not a person? Su Qi and the boy both burst forth with spiritual energy towards the door. The boy's power was so bug, he could not only transform himself into anything but also do the same to others. Moreover, it wasn't just an illusion he created. It was an actual transformation of the body, possessing all of its attributes. Deserving to be at the pinnacle existence like the angel divine race, even without a question mark, his own angel series could sense a bit. However, Su Qi could also see that although this ability was buggy, it was not easy to use and it came at a certain price. The effect was short-lived. There was a limit to the number of forced transformations, and the boy's complexion was indeed a bit pale. The door was counting down in mid-air. Tick-tock, tick-tock. A mass of demons no longer appeared as elementary students but had unfolded their wings, charging towards the sky. They weren't aimed at attacking the escaping crowd but instead towards the door. They too wanted to leave this place. Of course, there was someone to stop them. The next moment, Su Qi felt the divine brush slip out of his hand and fly away. After the exit formed, the demons regained some of their power, so Ma Liang's power also recovered a bit. I liked your last painting. So, Ma Liang's voice echoed in Su Qi's ears. The next moment, a figure holding a Gatling gun stood mid-air, mecha, Taoist talisman, transforming device, and all were drawn out by the divine brush. Boom, boom, boom. Instantly, all demons trying to approach the ancient gate in the air were struck down, falling towards the ground. The boy squinted at the scene. Is that person the owner of the painting? Not buddies. You come to the rooftop to enjoy the breeze without even unlocking the hidden characters? Don't know him, have no idea, and not acquainted. Su Qi directly responded with a threefold denial. Ma Liang had to suppress these demons here and seemed to be staying in the ancient gate as well, possibly for some reason. However, that was none of his concern for now. Su Qi looked at the door. Next comes the most critical moment. He was about to exploit a game-changing bug. Whoosh! Su Qi's figure was rapidly flying within the bursting power. The solid door hung high in the sky. He and the boy, both bursting with spiritual energy for flight, were closing in fast. The ticking of the clock counted down, emitting a light different from this world. Amidst the black and white of the old days, this was the only exit here. At that moment, the boy suddenly furrowed his brow. They've broken free. Looking back, 3 mice had already started crumbling inch by inch, rapidly swelling up. 3 truly massive, terrifying bodies burst forth with the genuine aura of demigods. They didn't chase. Only each let out a hoarse, muffled growl, filled with anger and killing intent. In an instant, Su Qi and the boy felt the air around them suddenly tighten, and the sound waves made their bodies tremble. The power that erupted was secondary. The key was the suppression of sequence layers, the grandeur of life ranks, causing their spiritual energies to become chaotic, poorly flowing. Your 15 seconds seem like pie in the sky. Su Qi remained unshaken, merely halted mid-air. Shit, the boy cursed. How was I supposed to know that after they came to the rooftop, rules wouldn't constrain them, and their strength would greatly recover? Both were locked in by a powerful aura, and the air around them condensed, with less than 10 seconds remaining. 3 figures and several demons growled as they rushed toward them. Daozi, in a deep voice, said, "Is it finally my turn to make a move?" He had gathered his strength, ready to burst forth at any moment, to demonstrate his power and usefulness in front of Ma Liang. But the next moment, Su Qi pushed him down. "Hold on, we don't need you yet." Daozi? At this critical moment, Su Qi calmly looked at the boy. "Got any more tricks up your sleeve?" "No shit." The boy's mouth curled into a wild smirk. "Who do you think I am?" He spread his fingers, and on his fingers was a paper ring, which abruptly opened at that moment. Surprisingly, it formed a paper bird. Flapping its huge wings, smashing through the power that locked them. The paper bird fiercely carried both of them straight toward the door. However, in an instant, 3 massive devilish phantoms burst forth with a thunderous roar. "Stay!" Their terrifying faces and deep, hoarse voices echoed through the sky. The boy sneered. "Sorry, but you can't hold me." He was bold, but he had the capital to be so. All his spiritual energy burst forth. Suddenly, numerous patterns converged above the paper bird. Amidst a series of sharp cries from the paper bird, a burst of cyan-white light fell, not only blocking the attacks by an inch but also fiercely pushing them forward, sending them directly through the door. The door, too, a moment later, as the ticking of the clock ceased, slowly became ethereal, and the time in the entire space seemed to freeze along with that clock stop. In the sky dome, a mass of black clouds began to gather, droplet by droplet of black rain slowly falling. Ma Liang stood in a corridor, slowly watching this scene, catching a few drops of rain with his hand. The divine brush also slowly flew back. "Good luck, young Su Buxian." Although that boy claimed to have burst forth with immense strength, in reality, just now, Ma Liang had subtly helped too, and it seemed Su Buxian also knew he would intervene, remaining utterly calm throughout. At this moment, Ma Liang gazed at the sky dome. A massive downpour of black rain thunderously fell like a flood, with the demons below screaming madly. The 3 demigods were continually collapsing, yet they had nowhere to escape. Their evil powers were being erased, turning back into ordinary students and teachers, and Ma Liang was no exception. His power and the mystically emitting brush were also becoming ordinary. Ma Liang understood this was only temporary. Old Days Gate, this prison, for now it's as long as it can be dragged out. The war with the abyss, the delays from ancient times, still more time is needed for this present generation. Extraordinary had already awakened, restrictions were also already lifted, demigods would gradually awaken afterwards, and the curtain would be drawn. At the same time, half a foot of the divine stepped before the gate, just missing that one step, and all their efforts that was to hold back this step. Soon, Ma Liang was engulfed by the black tide. Here, every trace was being slowly covered. Bugs naturally arise through the loopholes in the mechanism, thus utilizing this loophole to break the rules. However, similarly, some loopholes aren't considered bugs, just because the player's methods, unexpectedly hard, generate malignant bugs. When Su Qi stepped out of the door, he had already completed his preparations. That was to summon all the Black Shadow Corps, stuffing them all into Holy Light Corridor. Since, whether it's the Luo Shinfu inside the ring, or everyone in the Holy Light Corridor, they couldn't evade detection. Entering the door, each consumed a key. Then, upon leaving, according to the original rules, everyone who left would receive a key reward. Now Su Qi used 2 ways to exploit loopholes, one being the Holy Light Corridor, the other being the Spirit House. Before going in, the Black Shadow Corps had not been detected in the Spirit House. But coming out, he had summoned them, allowing each person to take away this reward as an individual. Next, Su Qi looked straight ahead. Now was the time to verify if his understanding was correct or not. Even the Black Shadow Corps of the Su family army, which were still in incubation, training, or internship phase, were all stuffed into the Holy Light Corridor. This amount had completely surpassed 5,000. Now, right in front of Su Qi was an old-fashioned slot machine, which started spinning rapidly without him having to lift a finger. Clang, clang, clang. The speed increased, and in the next moment, the symbols of 3 black and white bears appeared on all. Only the roaring rumble could be heard. Countless white keys burst forth from it. Beautiful! Su Qi snapped his fingers. I just love this kind of private server feeling. Bright, numerous keys were recklessly flying out. This time, it seemed as though everyone who left the door, based on their various actions inside, would receive 2 to 4 white keys. Su Qi looked at his portion, roughly about 15 keys. MVP for just this amount? However, Su Qi, stroking his chin, pondered. Does this also mean that keys are quite precious? That's no problem then. About 30 people in the Black Shadow Corps and the Holy Light Corridor, although all were given the lowest reward of 2 keys, but it was already enough with over 5,000 people in total, excluding a part that was just a lump of black fog not yet birthed by Su Chi forcefully dragged over as headcount. However, they were filtered out. The ones left were about 3,000 people. In other words, Su Chi now possessed over 6,000 keys. Previously, I had only 1 key, and except for using it to open the door, I hadn't had the chance to see what other wonderful uses it had. But now, I have enough to do some research. Su Chi could feel a strange power within the keys. He didn't research them now, as the keys should be used inside the door to bring out their other effects. He collected all the keys back into the item slot. Then he looked towards another grander, more refined machine. This must be his special reward. This time, Su Chi walked over, stretched out his hand on the lever, and the next moment he gave a pull. Boom! An even more startling roar resounded, and the entire massive machine was constantly blinking with light, resplendent. In just a breath, the machine began to transform amid a burst of fog as the doors inside the cabin opened rhythmically. A spray of gold light scattered from within. Jackpot! Su Chi looked over, and to be honest, this set of reward extraction items not only looked familiar but also easily evoked associations. He reached out and picked up the item that had been dispensed, shining with gold light. This is... Su Chi was somewhat startled because he too saw such a thing for the first time. These were actually 2 character cards. Congratulations, player, for obtaining Divine Malyong character card. Congratulations, player, for obtaining Demon Blaze Thorn character card. Each card has one-time usage only, able to summon the character to assist you in battle. Each character card adapts its summoner's sequence power and affiliated faction. Su Chi's eyebrows slightly raised. So this means people from the present world will draw heroes, strong beings, or even divines from the present world, while the believers from the abyss will draw various demigods and demons from the abyss. But Su Chi looked at the 2 cards. Giving me 2 different kinds? What does it mean? The identity of heavenly destiny people seemed to have overlapped with the venerable identity, or rather because his sequence encompassed powers of the abyss, present world, and even outer god. Furthermore, Su Chi also noticed the line below. Please note, the current drawing version is the Ancient Gate Special Edition, exclusive to this version with special strengths and character pools. Each draw will pull a character card from the Experience Gate world, with a 0.01% chance of drawing any entity from the old days. Oh! Su Chi was somewhat puzzled. What's all this? The information contained in these 2 sentences is extremely large. Firstly, the means of drawing character cards should not be limited to use only in extremely evil events. Subsequent updates will be added. Secondly, there is a 0.01% chance that what is drawn is not the Ancient Gate, but an entity from the old days. The Ancient Gate refers to the final battlefield between the present world and the abyss. But the old days contain much more, such as the black-haired youth who once appeared on the dueling ground, and the main god space he mentioned behind him, many hubs that disappeared in the flow of history. No one knows what kind of character card will be drawn. Su Chi put both cards away. He muttered to himself, "This should be a gifted draw. I wonder if keys could still be used later. It's not out of the realm of possibility, or rather, it's quite likely." Su Chi had already seen something similar to a coin slot on this machine where you insert coins. From this point of view, the importance of keys has once again increased. Su Chi looked at his collection of over 6,000 keys. Then let's keep exploiting this bug. If there was a first time, then there will be countless times. It didn't matter if the black and white bear was the GM in the Ancient Gate. As long as the black and white bear didn't notice, Su Chi naturally intended to fleece it. After Su Chi collected all the rewards, this enclosed space began to swiftly dissipate. And, just like before, many corridors appeared densely packed. However, what was different from before was, this time, there were a group of people around Su Chi, including those who had just escaped from that world and others experienced in the Gate world. Each of them was battered and bruised with their spiritual energy depleted, lying on the ground with pale faces. However, soon Su Chi saw them each pull out a white key and crush it in their hand. Instantly, all their injuries and all their spiritual energy depletion were completely recovered. So it has this use too? Su Chi raised an eyebrow. Instant recovery to prime condition. These keys are incredible. No wonder their output is controlled. At that moment, a voice slowly rose beside him. You drew a character card, right? Su Chi turned to look. The young man standing before him was upright and extraordinary, exuding an unmistakable powerful aura, and his speech seemed almost divine. Su Chi tilted his head, puzzled. You are? The young man's eyes showed a hint of irritation. Don't tell me you have face blindness. Su Chi looked closer. Oh! Su Chi clapped his hands. Old Zhang. Hey! It's been years since we've seen each other, and you still owe me $500. First of all, my last name isn't Zhang. My name is Bei Shenxing, and secondly, his eyelids twitched. If you keep playing dumb, you're about to miss some crucial information. Su Chi snapped his fingers. Now that I think about it, I remember, little bro. Bei Shenxing really wanted to take back his previous statement that this guy was interesting and pleasing to the eye. What's the matter? Su Chi paused. What did you mean just now about the character card? Bei Shenxing calmly said, Stop pretending. It's no big secret that as long as you participate enough, everyone has a chance to draw. He held out a card on which the design was unclear. It seemed that except for the owner, no one else could see or use the character card. Hence, there was no possibility of transfer or stealing. Su Chi also took out the Blaze Thorn Demon's character card, previously the golden sparkling one from Ma Liang's character card. This Blaze Thorn Demigod Demon card was similar to the one in Bei Shenxing's hand. It seems, both of us are quite lucky, having drawn one of those 3 demigod demons, Bei Shenxing said with a light smile. So what was that very important information you mentioned? Keys are very important. Bei Shenxing pointed towards a distant center, where the Black and White Bear's gear shop was located, with a mechanical black and white bear sitting inside. There, you can exchange keys for opportunities to draw. Su Chi showed no expression, but his heart was blossoming with joy. Look at that. Look at that. The recharge system has been cracked by me. However, Su Chi did not act immediately, as showing his cards now might alert the real Black and White Bear. In order not to startle the snake by hitting the grass, Su Chi naturally wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to launder all his keys before entering the core land. So now, you want to walk with me? Bei Shenxing looked toward Su Chi. Your followers seem to have all been buried within. It appears that those trigger mechanisms you set off before were commands for them to complete, and they paid the price for it. Su Chi gave him a glance. It could only be said that he was overthinking it. The followers had been sent in by him, having obtained what was needed, and they could have continued to be used as cannon fodder. But coming up, Su Chi calculated the time, and the followers would begin the Venerable's pollution value plan. Put simply, it involved using the Dark Scripture to inspect whether the Venerable they served had reached a level suitable for the evil god's will. This inspection by the Dark Scripture was no simple glance. It involved completely opening up the soul, peering into all secrets like an X-ray. It was said to be for checking pollution values, but it was also not without the purpose of pressing down on the Venerable's pride, increasing their compliance. Naturally, Su Chi would not do such a thing. But once there was resistance, then those followers who would give their lives to protect the Venerable would instantly burst forth, slaying the rebellious Venerable. They were both Taoist guardians and judges. I could do that, Su Chi casually agreed. Bei Shenxing lightly sketched a smile. Since I've chosen to accompany you, it means I acknowledge your strength. After all, I do not make a habit of inviting the weak. How juvenile and arrogant. Su Chi gave a thumbs up. Then you've really got good taste. Bei Shenxing and Su Chi lingered for a while in the Black and White Bear store. This black and white bear store naturally existed at every location, with many identical machines used only for drawing character cards. The black and white mechanical bear beside them would not speak but held up signs that displayed the information everyone asked for. Of course, this was limited to basic shopping information and rules. If you wanted to ask other questions, different numbers of keys had to be paid, the amount depending on the value of the question. Apart from the reward for leaving the door each time, the first draw in the shop requires 2 keys, and then it increases regularly. Bei Xinxing's eyes were piercing. That is to say, the second time costs 4 keys, the third time 6 keys, and so on 8, 10, and so forth. In this way, the production of character cards is limited and, curiously enough, Bei Xinxing said with a light laugh, it seems that as you go further, the chances of drawing higher quality character cards also increase. Let's see how many keys we get later. This man Bei Xinxing, confident, extraordinary, possessing divinity, had an invincible heart. He could be called arrogant, but he indeed had the capital to be so. He made 2 draws straight away, leaving himself with only 3 keys. Bei Xinxing frowned. As expected, all trash. Both character cards were of obscure names, unknown and with ordinary strength. Yet, when Bei Xinxing looked at Su Qi, his eyebrows lightly raised, noticing that Su Buxian had not drawn any character cards. Are you saving them for later? Stocking up a bit, waiting for an auspicious moment to draw, Su Qi stated blandly. After all, single draws don't produce miracles. 10 in a row is the way to go. Bei Xinxing fell silent, watching Su Qi. 10 in a row would need 110 keys, and given the current situation, unless the rewards in the subsequent doors increased the output, it would be a long time to stock up. And Su Qi was just preparing. Although he had over 6,000 keys, the ever-cautious Su Qi still thought it wasn't enough. After all, his luck had always been poor. Single draws couldn't produce miracles. This had already been proven when he broke through to the 7th rank. He had just barely broken through using the entire spirit vein of Heavenly Mountain. And Su Qi wasn't doing nothing. He asked the black and white bear a question. Learning that these character cards, when used, are only projections possessing only part of their strength and not the will, he felt even more at ease. Let's go. Bei Xinxing looked down one of the paths. I'm becoming increasingly eager for the doors ahead. Su Qi also strode forward. If this was the core area of the dark zone, then that meant the following doors would gradually approach the deepest parts. It would also come into contact with all sorts of extraordinary beings, demigods, real gods. Now, they were getting closer to the cradle of the evil god. He would say he was exploiting a bug, but in reality, it was about gathering all his strength, preparing. This extreme wicked event was now quite obvious. At the end, it would stir up past wars, with numerous extraordinary powers descending, with many top forces engaging in outright chaotic battles. Countless worlds, countless lives would participate. After they entered the corridor, there were different forks, different pathways, but overall they all led downwards. The floor had a gentle incline, proving that no matter which direction they went, they were actually quietly going deeper, or rather closer to the vortex of the dark zone, towards the abyss. And this time they walked for a little while. What, oh venerable ones of the abyss, what are you planning this time? Can you reveal it? Bei Xinxing directly and unabashedly asked. Su Qi replied with a question. What do you think? Can I reveal it? If not, then not. Bei Xinxing remained calm, lightly laughing. But in fact, I know more than you imagine. Like what? Su Qi asked with interest. You're not saying anything, yet you expect to get something from me? Bei Xinxing gave Su Qi a weird look, finding him to have quite the thick skin. But I still have to tell you, Bei Xinxing looked at Su Qi. I'm joining you as a personal choice, but I won't get involved in the affairs behind you all. They didn't distinguish between evil and righteousness, jumped chaotically, did as they pleased, self-centered, viewing the world. You're backing down? Su Qi stroked his chin. Not thinking about making a name for yourself, just being a little broadcaster here? Bei Xinxing let out a light laugh. It's the surge of history. the destructive impact that devastates heaven and earth, the vast vortex that can't be resisted. The strength of a single person is merely a drop in the ocean, even those you call venerable. When the ancient strength revives, and a great many traces burst in this surge, anyone less than extraordinary is but weak dust. Bei Xinqing added another sentence. Of course, I'm an exception. Su Qi calmly said, All right, we know you're capable. Stop bragging, we're here. He looked ahead. At the end of the corridor before them stood a massive door, exuding a heavy presence with its thick structure. The patterns on it were damaged, stained with various forms of corrupt black blood. Yet there was a faint golden glint shimmering through, as if it were forged of gold. This door requires 3 keys to open. Bei Xinqing observed the lock above. Luckily, to prevent such situations, I've kept 3 spares. He inserted the 3 keys into the lock, one by one. Boom! The whole door began to move with a clack. A layer of mist similar to the one before appeared inside. Just from the number of these keys and the strange aura on this door, I can tell that this time the challenge is even greater. Bei Xinqing softly said, Of course, it's also possible we'll encounter more people. Let's go. He stepped directly into the mist. Su Qi hesitated for a moment, then taking a glance at the patterns on the door, followed. As he stepped through, hundreds of keys simply vanished. After all, he was carrying a bunch of people on his back, and the entry fee was not small. Of course, that was irrelevant. The rewards for exploiting bugs would naturally be astonishing. As he stepped into the mist, Su Qi felt an indescribable discomfort, as if moving from flowing water into a stagnant pool. This was the non-existent space inside the ancient gate. After entering, Su Qi's senses were deprived, as if he were being transported and twisting. After an unknown length of time, he slowly opened his eyes. Sir, sir, a polite voice rang in his ear. Su Qi slowly opened his eyes to see a blonde woman in a business suit. She apologized. Sorry to disturb you, you've been sleeping in our lounge for an hour, but there's half an hour left until closing time. Su Qi realized he was in a grand bank. People around him adorned in gold, luxurious and extravagant, casting disdainful and scornful glances at him. While he lay sprawled on the sofa in the lounge, he calmly got up. Is that so? I thought it was only 4 o'clock. Which capitalist allows you to close so early? The blonde female employee? She forced a smile while still maintaining professional composure. I apologize, sir. This is the legally mandated closing time in Golden City. After all, the city's nights are quite chaotic. She was beginning to lose her patience. The people who entered this bank were all wealthy, with assets over 10 million. This young man in his simple attire had appeared suddenly in the lounge. Someone had already reported him to the manager. She had come to inquire. Seeing the manager gesture to her now, she chose not to say more, looking at Su Qi with disdain before turning to leave. Su Qi sat up, leaned back on the soft sofa, and observed everything around him. He didn't see Bei Xinqing. It seemed they had all been scattered after passing through the door. Moreover, unlike the previous school encounter, which was a small area, this time it was an entire city. And that female staff member just said, Golden City will be very chaotic at night. Su Qi caught a whiff of an unusual scent from the tip of his nose. At this very moment, people who had entered through various gates were gradually waking up in parts of the city and beginning to explore it. Among them, there were the presence of powerful venerables and abyss believers, as well as all kinds of top forces. And the people of the abyss, with several venerables looking at the city with cold indifference, were collecting information. This city seems to have some abnormality. The dark scripture guides us here, stating there's a divine, but we do not yet know what identity or how to unleash it, to open the exit's door. They were exploring without revealing any identities, fully aware that many others had also made their way here, including quite a few heavenly destiny people. Thus, the abyss believers were dispersing throughout the city, with several venerables and some followers, biding their time, waiting for news. However, soon someone came knocking. pushing open the door of the quiet bar they occupied and heading straight for them. 5 venerables and their followers' expressions turned cold, revealing a hint of murderous intent. Unexpectedly, the person lifted their heads slowly, revealing those abyssal eyes filled with black pupils. Descendants of the abyss, little fellows. The person in front of them wore a strange smile. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Meanwhile, on another front, numerous top forces also began to move, including heavenly destiny people gathering through the World Tree Withered Leaf. Gentlemen, upon entering here, the World Tree Withered Leaf immediately sensed intense pollution, and likely venerables from the abyss have also entered. For now, we have no idea what the situation is inside this gate world. I suggest we take it one step at a time. Nevertheless, while they were discussing their strategy, a large number of vehicles and helicopters had already appeared. Likewise, a person in a gray coat stepped off the helicopter with decisive steps, their eyes sharp, watching the crowd. Gentlemen, I am the director of the City Security Bureau. Now please follow me to the bureau. There is something important I need to discuss with you. And amidst them, many forces were mixed in, seemingly already monitored and in the process of being contacted by various dispatched individuals, including Su Qi. At this very moment, in another corner of the bank, a young man in a suit silently pressed a hidden earpiece, calmly drinking coffee. Target identified, but he calmly looked at the pocket watch in his hand, which wasn't displaying a clock but black and white liquids. I'm having some trouble telling if this person is heavenly destiny or abyss. The pocket watch shows he seems to have traces of both. From the earpiece came a calm voice. Keep observing for a while. If the opponent is a descendant from the abyss, there must be others who have come here as well. Understood, thanks. The young man slowly pocketed the watch. Honestly, he found this person quite odd. According to the information passed down, everyone who had entered the gate world, who was surveilled, was acting with extreme earnestness and decisiveness, using various means to immediately gather all information about this place. Yet the person before him was lying there with snacks and fruits on the table in front of him, treating this lounge like home. Moreover, the young man glanced at the pocket watch's display. I've never seen a person with black and white distributed like this. Others apparently had already made contact with each heavenly destiny person and the present world's top forces, naturally judged by the traces. The more one interacted with the abyss, the more traces would accumulate, and the pocket watch would display black. They relied on this to make immediate contact with those from later generations. And it was the same for the abyss side. Forget it, I'll make contact first. The young man muttered calmly. If he's a heavenly destiny person, that's best. If he's from the abyss, then I'll just have to take care of him. Su Qi wasn't standing still. Although it seemed like he was idly leveraging the situation, he was actually suppressing the surging abyss power within him. His pupils could no longer contain the illusory shadows from showing. It seemed that with each entrance, this phenomenon would occur. The previous entrance into that eerie school wasn't too severe, but now, it directly triggered it. Hence, just moments ago, while on the couch, facing such an urgent situation, Su Qi chose to enter his spiritual space and battled the blood-killing bishop for 300 rounds. This was his third challenge, compared to the first time where he was almost instantly crushed to death and the second time, where he barely lasted a few minutes before being killed. This time Su Qi was evidently stronger and more enduring. After all, his growth was happening every moment at a rapid pace, so Su Qi wanted to suppress his strength for as long as possible. Because he had not yet fully integrated the immortal path, which was an important trump card in Su Qi's possession. Now every burst was terrifying. Though Su Qi appeared to be merely sitting on the couch, showing no signs of distress, in reality, his entire being had entered an unoccupied room within the holy light corridor. In this space, Su Qi was surrounded by terrible phantom shadows and monstrous creatures of pollution, all bursting with a horrifying presence. And the projection of the evil god behind him was already 100 meters tall and even directly punched through the walls of the holy light corridor. This abrupt development startled the ancient forces nearby, those that were still recovering their strength due to Su Qi's actions, each of them standing up from the ground in alarm. What's going on? That youngster. Why is there abyss power appearing in this odd space? Could it be the abyss has broken through? Unfortunately, they didn't know that it wasn't the abyss breaking through. It was the eruption of abyss power within Su Qi himself. At this very moment, Su Qi was still battling the blood-killing bishop, engaged in a fierce fight within the spiritual space. Since it was within the spiritual space, Su Qi could use all his trump cards without any reservations, though they were all manifested through his spiritual power. The indifferent blood-killing bishop, devoid of any expression or will, harbored only pure murderous intent to kill Su Qi. Moreover, what he was facing wasn't the actual blood-killing bishop, but an incarnation of the abyss power. It is said that a god possesses a powerful ability, an ability that can create a sequence path, allowing descendants to tread upon it, consolidating the power of faith and becoming even stronger. Su Qi was suppressed, forced back step by step. It seems that the evil god is indeed different from any other god. Not only does it have a multitude of powers, but it can also easily create various bishops, and its pollution is easily able to infiltrate the present world. Su Qi still remembered the master of destruction. Her strength was already terrifying, possessing a multitude of astonishing powers unlike any ordinary divine being. Furthermore, she had a bug-level power like the ability to retrospect in time. This just goes to show the dreadfulness of the evil god. And, although Su Qi was being pushed back, gradually crumbling, he was still gathering all the battle information every second, looking for any weaknesses that could defeat his opponent. This outbreak, although taking place in the Holy Light Corridor, has already reached its limit. The fourth will probably be even more terrifying. Su Qi had a premonition that the final outbreak would shake the heavens and the earth, and if he could not defeat the blood-killing bishop and take control of the rampaging abyss power during the fourth trial, then the last time, he would undoubtedly be standing on the edge of the abyss, experiencing its most overwhelming storm. After managing to endure for another minute, the yellow robe and divine scissors and other divine artifacts on Su Qi's body were all being shredded. Of course, it wasn't that these items were actually being torn apart, but rather that Su Qi's spiritual power was nearly exhausted and couldn't manifest the strength of these trump cards. The shredding also signified that Su Qi was about to be defeated once again. But at that moment, Su Qi suddenly felt the immortal path within his body slamming into something, and his sequence burst forth with strange power. He slammed his hands together with a forceful clap. A divine palm descended from the sky, booming and crushing everything as it headed straight for the blood-killing bishop. This palm, incredibly, flung it flying away, but at the same time, the blood blade of the blood-killing bishop also pierced through Su Qi. Third trial failed. Remaining attempts. 2. Boom! Su Qi's head roared. His eyes slightly squinted. He was once again back to reality from the spiritual space. Even though he had just been slain, failing the challenge, the sudden burst of strength given by the Immortal Way sequence was somewhat astonishing. However, now looking back calmly, the Immortal Way sequence once again dimmed, the sequence path lines slowly flickering, not illuminated like the other sequence paths. He himself couldn't grasp how to use the power he had just felt. It can play an inch stop, right? Su Qi had high expectations for the immortal path. The other two ancient relics, like the ancient god's heart and angel feather, both were damaged and withered items. Simply put, they were extremely precious foundations, but they required him to develop slowly. There's no need to say more about the evil god's eye. Sealed fiercely, leaking even a little bit of power, had placed him on the sword's edge. Now, only the Immortal Way sequence visibly had potential and strength. After all, it was the core of the dimension, something even the Abyss and the mysterious Terminator strove for amidst the destruction of the dimension. The core of the previous dimension, the heart of divine weapon, its power was already evident. So, Su Qi anticipated it greatly, but naturally, he had to make preparations as this thing would undoubtedly require massive resources. Suddenly, Su Qi raised an eyebrow. noticing the commotion outside. Interesting. He swept away all the abyssal aura that had burst forth from his body due to the power of his eyes. Then he left directly from the holy light corridor. He slowly opened his eyes. A black gun barrel faced him, and the person holding the gun wore a ghastly mask, exuding a dangerous aura. Finally awake, huh? The man looked at the young man before him and let out a cold laugh. For some reason, when Su Chi opened his eyes, he felt a chill all over. Hands on your head, and roll into that corner. Otherwise this bullet will stay in your head. Su Chi didn't move immediately. Looking around, at this moment, the magnificent bank was in complete chaos, with a large amount of jewelry scattered on the floor, shattered glass, and a few security guards' corpses. Those 20 or so individuals, each holding various weapons and wearing ghastly masks, were carrying thick bags and pointing guns at the head of the lobby manager, their eyes full of terror. Sigh! A bank robbery, always entertaining to hear about. The commotion Su Chi had just sensed was the outbreak of turmoil and the gunfire suppressing many people. Get up! The person in front of him commanded in a harsh tone. Wait a moment. I've been sitting for a while and my legs are numb, said Su Chi with an apologetic smile. Raising his hands and standing up, he slowly walked towards the corner. If it were an ordinary bank robbery, then Su Chi could easily resolve it, but he noticed that the weapons in the hands of the robbers were carrying a dangerous and deadly aura, as though emboldened by some kind of power. Having reached the corner, Su Chi actually had no intention of making a move, because, as he saw it, there was a strong presence here. For example, the young man squatting beside him. He was looking forward, not at Su Chi, but calmly said in a low voice, "Others are fleeing and shouting. In the entire bank, you were the only one napping on the sofa, outsider. Your nerve is really something else." The young man's voice was cold as he pointed out Su Chi's identity by referring to him as an outsider. Since he intended to make contact, there was no need to beat around the bush. He was now observing Su Chi's reaction. Su Chi also paused. "It's not like that, strange buddy. The bank's efficiency is low. I took a number, waited in line, and what's wrong with napping? However, the air conditioning here is nice, the temperature is just right, and the fruit platter and snacks are quite good too. It's just that when I asked for the 6th platter, no one bothered anymore." The young man? What the hell are you going on about? Is the point the sleeping? I just directly mentioned you're from the outside world. Didn't you hear? But anyway, the young man secretly glanced at his pocket watch. It was balanced between black and white just a while ago, but since this guy woke up, the black part had faded significantly, and the white part had taken over a larger area again. Of course, this was also because Su Chi's evil god strength had burst forth, threatening to swallow him whole, and through the fight with the blood-killing bishop, although ended in failure, he had managed to suppress it again. However, the commands from his pocket watch and earpiece made him somewhat judge and decide to reveal something to Su Chi proactively. "Listen carefully," said the young man calmly. "You people from beyond the gate world do not understand this city, thinking that all you see are ordinary people, that all you see are the weak. But in reality, one false step and you plummet into the abyss." "For example?" Su Chi asked, clearly interested. "Like these robbers right now," said the young man softly. The robbers had broken through the vault's defenses, and each of them were doing exactly what robbers were supposed to do. At the same time, there was a large amount of siren noises outside, and numerous fully equipped police had already surrounded the area, ready for action. Their weapons come from a certain organization's special supply, and what they are doing now will affect us and you both. This city is about to face a moment of chaos, where everything is danger. Su Chi paused. "Your words are greatly helpful. In the next Riddleman contest, I'll have new material ready." The young man. "All right, just kidding." Su Chi paused. "Since you know I'm an outsider and you've approached me voluntarily, informing me of this information, it seems you need my help now." The young man squinted his eyes. This guy was quite sharp. Among the many people who came from outside the gate world, there weren't many easy targets. Regarding the information about this city, I will tell you in detail after I sort this all out and leave. But the most important thing right now is to deal with the robbers here. Su Chi paused. I can do that. Since the person had sought him out and clearly knew his identity. Even Su Chi had glimpsed an identity card from the city security bureau inside the man's clothing. He and the police outside were naturally from the same organization, and he even had an earpiece, though it was deeply embedded. So deep that even the robbers wouldn't notice there was a cop right before their eyes. Since he'd managed to find him, and was clearly following him, that indicated other outsiders who'd come through the gate had already been contacted as well. Moreover, he just stealthily glanced at something in his pocket, and Su Chi had also caught a glimpse. It was a watch with strange powers. Su Chi had gathered a lot of information from various tiny details. However, there's something I need to remind you to be cautious of. The young man suddenly became serious. And that is, wait for instructions, and do not cause a major accident or mass casualties. Su Chi narrowed his eyes, chuckled lightly. That might be a bit difficult. The young man frowned slightly. Why is that? We have arranged for snipers to lock on. If they're just after the money, they won't cause mass casualties in the interest of a safe getaway. How to put it, said Su Chi. The one who pointed the gun at me earlier had a distinct smell of gasoline on him. In their backpacks, the silhouette looked very much like a bunch of powerful explosives. Furthermore, their guns are all high-capacity automatic rifles. I believe that robbing a bank doesn't necessitate carrying so much ammunition. And one more thing. Su Chi paused. Anyone who's been a robber knows that the most critical element of robbing a bank is time. The young man? This statement sounded so off. They've been herding everyone into the corner since just now, taking their time completely. Even when breaking into the vault, they only used very ordinary methods, not deploying their explosives at all. The young man's expression darkened. Upon being told this by Su Chi, he seemed to realize this point as well. If that was the case, then it was indeed very dangerous and troublesome. He had to immediately pass this information to his superiors. Moreover, there are too many of them, more than 20 people. They would need 2 cars to escape. Su Chi muttered to himself. Of course, if it were me, I think 3 people would suffice. Enter. Kill the ordinary staff and anyone who screams first. Quickly show force. There's no need to waste time on ordinary people. Then immediately use explosives to breach the vault door, quickly take the appropriate gold bars, and immediately meet up with the accomplices to take a couple of the highest-ranking hostages, drive off, and even plant some bombs, not to explode, but to create distractions and delays. The young man? You're too familiar with this. These words made the young man doubt if his previous judgment had been mistaken. He quickly looked down at the watch, but the watch hadn't changed at all. And this scene was also noticed by Su Chi. He guessed with some certainty, internally musing, are they using that watch to verify the identities of the outsiders they come into contact with? The young man was now listening to the strategic deployment in his earpiece. But at that moment, an unexpected development occurred. Several robbers suddenly emerged from the corridor leading to the vault, their eyes holding a cold intent as they scanned the many hostages squatting against the wall. Suddenly, their gaze settled on a few. You lot, come with us. And unfortunately, Su Chi was one of them.